We're ready.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? I'm assuming that's being recorded.
Yes.
Okay. So, again, this is the April 10th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission special hearing. First application, 82 Brookwood Lane. Upon application of Amy Zabatakis, Rucci Law Group, LLC, authorized agent for Brookwood Hills, LLC, owners for a 9-lot subdivision of 31.7932 acres of property located in the 2-acre zone at 82 Brookwood Lane, map 33, block 41, lot 4. So we already had, hello, Ms. Zabatakis. We already had a presentation on your side. We did ask for public comment at the last meeting. We wanted to leave it open for the interveners to speak tonight. And then barring any additional public comment, I don't think there would be any, but you never know. Leave the floor to you after that, and then you can do closing remarks. You're welcome to stay, you know. Do we have anyone from the interveners, either in the audience or on Zoom, that would like to speak to this application?
Yes.
Hi, can you state your name?
Yes, I can. My name is Spencer Grimes, and I'm a 13-year resident of Brookwood Lane. And I wanted to follow up with this commission to a letter that I submitted last week on April 1st regarding what many of us in the neighborhood believe is a considerable public safety issue. And I'm referring to the intersection of Brookwood and Country Club. And I know Chairman Redmond, while I don't personally know you, I've been told that you played a role in you're well aware, I should say, of the situation at that intersection. But for those on the commission who are less familiar, I would sort of refer to it as an intersection where the conditions range from tricky in ideal conditions to, you know, beyond challenging, maybe even treacherous in times of low visibility, poor weather, heavy traffic, etc. So I wanted to, if I could, share a few visual aids to give you a better sense of what I'm talking about.
Sure. Do you want to?
Yes.
You
visuals
be
been submitted?
able to share your screen.
I just tried. Yes, Sarah. Is it ready now?
Yep, you
Okay.
should be able to now.
Okay. Okay, is that? Okay, so this is.
We don't see anything yet.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
Do a share screen.
Okay, how about that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the intersection, Brookwood into Country Club. And here you can see the traffic stripe that the town put on. And if, as intended, your vehicle is behind this traffic stripe, here's your visibility. Here's your sight lines to a fairly busy Country Club road, right? This is maybe 15 feet of visibility. This is a 6 or 7 foot cliff with a significant old growth maple here. As you can see, we're past the stop sign. So then on my second visual, so if you nudge out as a motorist into Country Club, you do get better visibility, but now you face cars coming up the hill towards Smith Ridge from Lambert that are accelerating to get up this hill into a narrowing roadway. The road narrows from below Brookwood to this area right here by about 4.5 feet. So now you're nudged into the road. You sometimes have traffic coming down at 30, 35, even 40 miles an hour down this down this road because it's on a downhill slope. So this is the view from coming down Country Club, as I just referred to. So maybe this is 50 or 60 feet above Brookwood on Country Club. And again, you can't even see the traffic stripe. So any cars that are abiding by that traffic stripe are completely invisible to cars coming down, vehicles coming down the hill here. And again, they travel often 30, 35, 40 miles an hour. Here is my final visual. This is now looking down toward Lambert and Indian Rock. Again, here's the stripe. Visibility, sightlines poor as well. So while there hasn't been an accident, at least according to the police department records since 2014, there were 2 in that year serious accidents with injuries to motorists, 2 in the year 2014. So given what I just displayed here, residents are concerned that an influx of heavy trucks hauling construction equipment, dirt, dead trees, whatever it is, will make for an even more dangerous traffic situation. And I mentioned the narrowing of Country Club for whatever reason. I didn't mention the Country Club's lower entrance right across the street from the Brookwood entrance and exit. But the turning radius, due to the narrowing and due to the traffic situation, the turning radius, especially for bigger, larger vehicles like heavy trucks, school buses, even the big Amazon truck at times has trouble navigating this turn. So residents are concerned that years of heavy equipment, construction vehicles, pose a serious public safety risk at this intersection. We don't have a whole lot of confidence that this intersection can safely support a significant increase in traffic. And I don't know what the solution is here, but I do know that if somehow we're able to avoid a serious incident, it will be purely due to good fortune, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? We can ask questions or no?
Yeah.
I have one, if I may. This is Commissioner Chris. Thank you, Mr. Grimes, for your comments. Regardless of this particular application, what I'm hearing from your comments, which strike me as very sincere and knowledgeable, is that the intersection, even today, has some danger to it. I'm wondering, have any residents in the area submitted maybe an application or commentary to the police commission regarding maybe putting in a 3-way stop at the intersection or a speed bump to slow traffic, which would help alleviate speeding as well as provide some additional safety? I'm wondering how that might be as a solution, perhaps, or to address the risk that you just outlined for this commission. Thank you, sir.
I'm not aware of any activity like that, but I certainly don't dismiss it as a bad idea.
I do have one question. You were referring to materials submitted a few days ago. That is the April 7th materials from SE Minor. Is that correct?
No,
So
it's a letter that I submitted on the 1st of this month.
I think it's posted in letters in response to the application, which is
Okay.
higher up the.
Yep. Got it. Yep, you see it. So
clear, are you party to the motion to intervene?
He is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question, but yeah, I think I heard interviewer, yeah.
Microphone on.
Sorry. It was just noted that you are a party to the intervention motion. That's all I wanted to know.
Mr. Grimes, one more question. The assessment that you just laid out for us with the photographic evidence, that is purely your opinion, correct? That is not a professional traffic engineer report or anything that may have been done to support that?
That's correct. That's correct. And I spoke to Ms. Carey and she informed me that the applicant has no obligation, and there's nothing in the regulations to require that the applicant provide some sort of assurance that heavy trucks and construction equipment won't pose additional danger at this intersection. But you know, I believe it's a very good idea if somebody undertook such an endeavor.
Okay. Commissioners, anything further from Mr. Grimes? Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else?
There's another intervener.
There is?
Yep, Mr. Freeman. Mhm.
Yes.
Is there an Hi there. Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Rob Freeman, and I live at 113 Brookwood Lane. We've lived in town for 6 years and lived in Westchester County for about 30 years before that in a community pretty similar to this one. And I am one of the interveners, yes.
Would you like to speak to the application?
I would, and I appreciate the opportunity. I got a few comments about the traffic situation and then just, you know, a broader one. But I would like to just share with the commissioners my view that there's been my impression that at both the Wetlands Commission, which, as obviously you know, we have met with and met with earlier this week prior to their vote, that this intervener effort is just Spencer Grimes and myself. And it occurred to me that we haven't shared with you, other than anecdotally, that we are part of a group of 12 households, each of which has contributed equal amounts of money and several $1,000s each that are involved in this initiative. And I'm going to actually read you the addresses. I won't read the names, but I'm going to read you the addresses because I just want you to understand that, you know, it's beyond just the two of us. So my wife and I
I just briefly have to clarify for the commission that legally, though, there are only two interveners, and it's Mr. Freeman and Mr. Grimes. So
I appreciate that, and
I just needed
and if I may,
commission that there are only two interveners. So I just needed to be clear on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The residents of 183 Brookwood Lane, Ashley and John Plato, the residents of 189 Brookwood, Pat and Jen Donovan, the residents of 191 Brookwood, Larry and Barbara Kessler, the residents of 37 Brookwood, Justin and Allison White, the residents of 99 Brookwood, Jamie and Kristen Scholes, 36 Brookwood, Lindsay Tucker, 44 Brookwood, Michael Diamond, Don DeFawcett, I'm forgetting what number his is, I think it's 150 or so, 34 Brookwood, Carolyn and Chris Suzanin, 296 Smith Ridge Road, Paul Pizeka. I understand that they don't have standing in this, but like all of you, they're residents and citizens of New Canaan. They've each spent several $1,000s in what is something that they all feel passionately about. And I just think it's important for you to understand that as commissioners of the P&Z. I know that there was a study that Ms. Carey put into the record at the request of Chairman Radman that indicates, and I'm sure you all have that, it's in the staff notes, that indicates that this is the largest subdivision in New Canaan since 2007. I was not aware of that prior to seeing Ms. Carey's report, but again, you've all seen it. The last subdivision of scale in town was the Dan's Highway subdivision, which was 10 homes. And again, that came before the commission in 2007. I don't know which of the commissioners in the room and the staff were on the commission, on the P&Z commission back then. I do want to point out, and you all are aware of this, that the other subdivisions that have come before the P&Z since then, nearly 2 decades ago, aren't even close, right? So this one is for 9 lots. Dan's Highway was 10. Every other one since then has been for 2 homes, except for one that was, I believe, 4 homes. That's important, I believe, because it means that we're dealing with a project that is not ordinary business for any of us. Certainly not, for me and my neighbors. My understanding from reading the regulations is that one of the purposes of the subdivision regulations is to provide for the circulation of traffic through the community, so that proposed streets, and I'll come back to the word proposed because obviously we're not talking about a proposed street, shall be in harmony with existing streets, especially as regards to safe intersections and so forth. Obviously, what Spencer just referred to is an existing streets, but I do believe that in the spirit of what the article, it's Article 1.0.2, it's in the purposes, right, first page of the regulations, that the consideration of what the impact is on existing streets, as Spencer just talked about, is certainly pertinent to the P&Z Commission. And I hope that you will consider it in that way. Frankly, look, we understand that this will be approved by the P&Z as it was by the wetlands. We've stated in our letters and in our statements that we're not opposed to development in New Canaan. We're not opposed to the Brookwood development. But we are deeply concerned for our neighborhood and for everybody who passes by Brookwood Lane on Country Club. Spencer showed you photographs. I know you've all done site visits, or I believe you have. I don't know that all of you have, but I believe you've all done a site visit and are familiar with the danger that Spencer talked about at that intersection. It's compounded by the fact that it's a dead-end street, and we're not, frankly, the street is not accustomed to that kind of traffic. And I believe that Dan's Highway, the prior project 18 years ago, was a through street, although I don't know that to be certain. It is a through street today. I'm not sure if it was then. But simply, we're here to ask you, to implore you, to think about this project and particularly the safety and welfare of our community right here in the neighborhood, but frankly, the broader New Canaan community, in a subdivision project that hasn't been seen in this town in nearly 2 decades. Spencer mentioned that we've been told by staff that there is no requirement for a traffic study. I have to say, I'm not sure I understand that. In the New Canaan zoning regulations, section 6.8 on traffic management, it does state that a quantitative analysis of traffic to be generated by a proposed development shall be provided. It doesn't say maybe, it doesn't say it's voluntary by the P&Z. It says it shall be provided, and it includes existing and proposed sight lines. We're not suggesting, by the way, that the volume of traffic, just the number of cars, is what the issue is. It's the sight lines, it's the speed at which vehicles are traveling. And I don't quite understand, and frankly, we haven't focused on it. All of our efforts and all of our money has been focused on the wetlands process, but section 6.8B, certainly does deal with traffic studies. So I urge you to please, reconsider whether, in fact, the P&Z is required to get a traffic study at the expense of the developer, which is what it states. And to the question that was asked about whether we have done a traffic study. Finally, we're here to ask you to consider implementing not only that thorough analysis at the intersection and on Brookwood, but frankly, I'm asking you to think a little more broadly about using every resource in your power and the regulations to implement whatever special conditions are appropriate for a project of this scale. Again, a scale that hasn't been done on a subdivision. Obviously, other projects in town are much larger. I get that, but not in a subdivision, not in the 2 to 4 acre zoning area in nearly 2 decades. So beyond whatever the traffic analysis and remediation might do, I would argue that the professionals and volunteers on the P&Z, the highway department, the police department, and so forth know better than we do, frankly, what protections are appropriate for any project, and particularly a subdivision of this scale. We're simply asking you to use whatever tools are in your toolkit to maintain the health, safety, and welfare, to promote the general welfare of the people of New Canaan. And I thank you very much for giving me the time to speak tonight.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this application? Sorry, come up to the microphone, state your name. Just press the button to turn it green. Hold it down. Oh, close. There
Yeah,
you
there
go.
you go. Hey, everybody. I just gave the same statement to wetlands the other night, so I'm sorry that I'm going to bore you with redundancy here. My name is John Herron. I am the board president of the New Canaan Field Club, and about 20-year New Canaan resident. I live across town, nowhere near Brookwood. So my personal, I'm not affected by it personally at all. The New Canaan Field Club directly abuts the property that is subject of this development as a downhill neighbor to the south, adjacent to Lot 6. We own the properties of 150 and 164 Smith Ridge Road. We do not access our property through Brookwood. We come off Smith Ridge, so we don't have any, we don't add traffic to the area. We're a 501c7 organization that includes over 300 New Canaan families. We are very pleased to see the proposed work that the applicants have done regarding their work to preserve, expand, and improve the wetlands. The reason that we're concerned was, evident this past August when we had that 100-year storm that came, that the runoff from the creek bed from our uphill, not them, but the uphill neighborhood, caused about $250,000 of damage to our pickle courts, our paddle courts, and our paddle hut. So we're very concerned about the building of impervious lots and above us. That being said, it's our intention to be good neighbors and do whatever we can to be good neighbors in this process for all involved. We've always wanted to work with our neighbors to strive to not impede their rights or make them unhappy in any way, because obviously we're a large group of people that can make some noise every once in a while. And we want to keep our neighbors as happy and as pleased as possible. Every work that we've done, we've come in front of this commission or the Wetlands Commission and tried to follow all the regulations and follow through to the best of our abilities. And I think if you look at the work that we've done on our field house in 2017, our pickle courts last year, our paddle courts, and all the different work that we did with the low impact lights, that we're good neighbors and we do our very best. We want to work with everyone on this project to be a positive part of it. We're positioned as an interesting potential partner in all this because for all involved, we are not interested in building current or future dwellings on any of the properties, but we are in a position to take over, control more land that's adjacent to our property, and we're trying to put financing together to buy Lot 6 so that we can expand the footprint and almost not develop one of the properties as a home or something that would use the roads as much, but to build out that area. So again, we have a lot of work to do to get the financing and work to an agreement with the developers, but we just wanted this commission to state that for the record. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this application? Ms. Zebedee.
Good evening, Amy Zabatakis, Rucci Law Group, here on behalf of Brookwood Hills LLC. I'm joined by representatives of the owner, Jim Hoffman and Adam Scher, and as well as with Len DeAndrea, the project engineer. I'm passing around a hard copy of the subdivision map. Let me also pull it up on the screen. All right, so as you recall from last month, we're proposing to subdivide the site into 9 single-family residential lots that vary in size from 2.155 acres to 4.79 acres. All of these lots are in excess of the 2-acre minimum within the zone. All the lots as designed conform to the New Canaan zoning regulations. Mr. DeAndrea went through each one of them with you in detail and discussed the feasibility of development. So we won't take you through that exercise again unless there are any questions. The proposed layouts are such that lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be accessed off Brookwood Lane, and the remaining lots 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 will be accessed off the existing driveway that currently comes off of Brookwood Lane. On Monday, we received the unanimous approval from the Wetlands Commission for the work in the upland review area associated with the driveway. I do recommend, if you have a chance, to watch the Inland Wetlands Commission's deliberations. They were extremely pleased with the work that's being proposed by the applicant. They stated that there will be no negative impact to the wetlands from the proposal. And to the contrary, they thought this was a real positive proposal for the area. Mr. Kenny spoke with you last time about some of the wetlands remediation work, and I know that's within their purview, but just so you understand, we're doing substantial wetlands remediation. There'll be new wetlands added. We'll be opening up a pipe that an area in the wetland in the center of the central wetlands is currently piped. We'll be opening up that pipe to daylight, which will vastly improve that wetland area. It will also improve the flooding conditions that are experienced, particularly what was discussed by the New Canaan Field Club, because now this site will be better able to hold water in the wetlands, which is what they're designed to do. I should also note that as part of their decision, the Wetlands Commission found that the interveners did not set forth sufficient and credible evidence to prove the allegations set forth in their petition. The petition that the interveners set forth to this commission was solely on wetlands-based issues. It was identical to the intervention petition they filed with the Wetlands Commission. So we do request that you reach the same conclusion. I'll note that what Mr. Grimes and Mr. Freeman spoke about today was not within the scope of their intervention. They both spoke about a traffic condition that's off-site, approximately 700 feet from this property. You know, I think I can speak for my clients and say that, you know, if there's some discussion with the town about improving that intersection, they would certainly support that discussion and be a part of it. But that is an existing condition. It's a scenario, you know, if we're talking about trucks, that's going to be a problem for anyone who lives on that road if they do an addition on their house or decide to rebuild. So that's not special to this property. The sight lines that have to do with the exiting the driveway onto this lot have been reviewed by Mr. DeAndrea's office and are safe. Our proposal also includes just over 2 acres of open space on the eastern side of the property. and an additional 1.2 acres of protected conservation easement area. This area exceeds the minimum required open space set aside under the town's subdivision regulations. So the purpose for the open space set asides is to provide green space for the neighborhood in an undeveloped area where the flora and fauna can thrive, and to minimize development in the area. So we've accomplished that in two ways: by designing lots that are in excess of the minimum acreage, and by creating a separate open space lot. By doing that, we reduce the developable area of the individual lots, unlike if we did purely conservation easements on every lot. So so again, if we look at the subdivision map, the open space is all along the eastern side. And then when you add in the wetlands areas, there's quite a bit of protected land in excess of 8 acres on this property that is going to be protected going forward. We did have some discussions about the trees on the western side of the property, the top, as you're looking at the survey. That was one of the reasons that we asked to be able to use the existing driveway. So I don't know if the commission is interested, but we did prepare an open space alternative. So I'll just pass that out and then I'll put it up on the screen.
The one you just passed out, that's the currently proposed.
Current is what you have in your hands now. What's coming to you is an alternative
Okay.
for your consideration. Switch on the screen. Okay.
Thank you.
So I now have the, you should have the alternative in front of you, and I have the alternative on the screen. The main difference in this alternative is that we've added a conservation easement area on the western side of the property to protect that area. This layout still has in excess of the required open space, over 2 acres of open space, ends up being approximately about 4.5 acres when you add the open space and conservation easement areas. My clients would be fine with this layout if you prefer this over the original proposal, but we're not, basically we're okay with either proposal.
I'm having difficulty in what changed.
Sure.
Because this one was color coded. The one you just handed out is not.
Correct. So the color coded one actually is a little, that's from our last presentation, and we tried to color in the wetlands in that one as well. I tried to do a color coded map for this one, and it was frankly not done in time.
It's still there. It's
So
not printed white.
Hmm?
Sorry. We're trying to find, just as Mr. Engel is, we're trying to find the pieces of the puzzle.
sure. So yeah, go ahead.
Can I just, in comparing the two, it appears that, and you've kind of outlined this already, the major changes are the additional conservation easement at the end of the Brookwood Lane cul-de-sac turnaround that's on the west edge.
Correct.
Correct. That's adding to the conservation easement.
Right.
Then you've expanded the conservation easement on the bottom left corner, which is the southeast corner, pointing towards the field club. Is that correct?
That is all open space in that area.
Oh, that's open space, not conservation easement.
Correct.
Okay. And then is there still a conservation easement? It looks like it's gone as part of lot 8.
So no, and frankly, that area, again, one of the reasons why some of those conservation easements looked a little bit odd and in the proposal was that we were trying to avoid including wetlands in the conservation easement because of we would go over the percentage of wetlands allowed, even if we made our conservation easement larger.
Mm-hmm.
So that area is basically we could put that conservation easement back on that area. It just was sort of, people seemed to not like it because it was kind of funny looking. So that was one of the reasons why that's removed, but we can, there's no reason not to have a conservation easement on that area because it's
Okay.
in between two wetlands.
And to keep going counterclockwise, on lot number 7, the conservation easement on the east edge has grown, correct?
Correct,
And the conservation easement on the north end has grown.
correct.
Could I also just add a comment on the lot number 8 conservation easement that was removed? I believe there's going to be a micro pool or some sort of drainage system on the lower portion of the removed conservation easement. So like on lot 8 where it says 40 feet, you may see that little mark. I think there's drainage going in there anyway, so it couldn't be developed really to begin
Was that
with.
a requirement of the Wetlands Commission, or
Requirement of complying with the drainage policy, I believe.
so is that going to be a rain garden of some sort, or?
Yes, it's a micro pool, which is,
We weren't, Len DeAndrea.
Press the
Oh,
button. A little harder.
yeah. Okay. Len DeAndrea, the engineer for the project. No, what we're trying to do is just make it more continuous and not break it up. We didn't need to put it on the west side of the driveway. And yes, there are some drainage features in the way of a micro pool, but the micro pool is not why we removed this conservation easement. We just had better opportunities now by doing it over there on the west side by 4, 5, and 6, and then filling in on the northerly end of number 7.
so, but the micro pool is part of the drainage
That's right.
plan.
Yep.
As is, there's another rain garden further down on the driveway, and that's all associated with the driveway.
Hmm.
Can I just clarify something?
Sure.
It appears to me that you've added 4 pieces to the puzzle here for conservation. Am I reading that correctly? If we're looking at the drawing, the way the drawing's oriented, one is at the lower right and along the bottom edge, and as well, and the piece along Brookwood. Are those the 4 pieces?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Overall, it's about like an acre and a half more. Is that what I gather? Open space?
Yeah, I think it is, right?
Goes from 3.2 to 4.7, 4.65.
Yep.
Correct.
as Commissioner Chris, I had a question on this, if I may. I'm referring again to 3.04 open space. I'm sure you're familiar with them. And also 3.4.5C, which is also in our subdivision. And it says it provided for in CGS section 8-25, every subdivision shall provide for open space in order to the following: A, protect and conserve natural features. I'm still struggling with what natural features are being protected by this of substance. B, protect and conserve community resources and or cultural resources. I'm unaware of any. Please correct me if I'm wrong. C, establish green belts and other linkages that connect open spaces. I don't see any here. D, provide for parks, playgrounds, and other active and passive recreation areas. Again, I'm not seeing that here. E, supplement existing open space areas. Though every new open space supplements them in some way, that would seem to be a box check in my view, could be deemed as such, but it doesn't connect to others in the area or adjacent. F, provide, protect, and enhance local trails. No trails here. And G, implement the open space and other recommendations to the plan of conservation development, which doesn't seem to address that either. If I move to C, it says, in determining the appropriateness of an area proposed for open space or other public purposes, the commission shall consider: 1, recommendations to the plan and conservation development. Since I'm familiar with the POCD, it's hard for me to see how this is addressing some of the issues addressed in that document. 2, presence or absence of any existing open spaces in the area. The nearest one would be to the west, when you have to go across the road, Brookwood, you go down a slope and there's a river in there that's protected, that's, pretty far away. 3, opportunities to interconnect existing proposed and potential future open space reservations into a comprehensive greenway and trail system. I'm not hearing that here either. 4, the opportunity to preserve or protect significant natural features. I don't recall any being stated. There's no big field of native orchids or ginseng or endangered animals that are dwelling here, where clearly that would be an issue, I would think, for us. And 5, the final one, comments from other agencies regarding needs, resources, and connection to the open space system of the town and preferred ownership. And we have heard from the Land Trust as well as the Conservation Commission, which is feels that a fee in lieu would be a more appropriate way to achieve these various goals. And so I'm struggling with either one of these in addressing the matters that shall be considered by the commission in our deliberations. So that's I'm struggling to see how this application is consistent with the things we need to think about here. So I welcome any comments.
Sure. So I
you
think
have.
that, we are creating, and I think as you heard the numbers, a substantial brand new open space area. This will be protected from development, and as part of the open space agreement, we will clarify that it's to be kept in its natural condition and protect the environment. Interestingly, you talk about sensitive areas. By the way, that the New Canaan regulation is written with the emphasis on the percentage of wetlands, which is somewhat unique to New Canaan. It sort of prevents us from, so for example, this central area where I'm talking about, we'll be opening up the pipe. That's an area where I would say you might be able to argue there are more sensitive resources in that area because of the wetlands and because of that stream and the animals, et cetera, that live there. But we can't include that in our open space designation because of the way your regulations are written. But what I think is wonderful about this project is that it will be interconnected, all of these wetlands areas with the open space areas. And this application really gives us an opportunity to improve upon those wetlands areas. Like I said, we'll be adding new wetlands, improving on the water flow. There are 3 or 4 different areas where there's going to be massive improvements to the wetlands, which is what the Wetlands Commission was very excited about during their presentation. So, we can't connect to other open spaces. As you mentioned, there aren't any other open spaces right adjacent to this property, but we're creating a brand new open space area that doesn't exist currently in this part of town. It does provide a natural buffer for the neighborhood, and I think is a real positive for the town, along with, and we haven't even spoken about the other positive to the community of the fire access and the new hydrant connection, which will be provided for the benefit of the whole community. So I do think you need to look at the proposal holistically. I have concerns candidly about the information from the Land Trust and from the Conservation Commission. Neither one of their boards invited us to speak with them or explain the project to them. Based on some of the colloquy that I read, I'm not even sure they were looking at the right plans. So it's hard for me to know what their considerations were, because they didn't invite us to come and speak to them or even let us know that they were going to be submitting documentation in advance of when they submitted their letters. But I will say that, and your town council has submitted a memo to this extent, it is not within your purview to require a fee in lieu. We have complied with the regulations as far as how the size of our open space is in excess of what's required. And we've complied with how it is calculated and the where it's located. You do have the list of prior subdivisions, and in those prior subdivisions, you know, there are frankly open spaces and conservation easements that are far less comprehensive than this one. I'll use the Greenlee Road subdivision as an example because I worked on that, so I'm pretty familiar with it. In that case, all of the open space was a conservation easement, which means that it didn't reduce the size of any of the lots. So those lots, as far as their coverage, can include all of the space within the conservation easement. It's also not open to the public. You know, if you wanted to have that be a requirement of the open space, then, you know, you could revise your regulations. I think you'll get to a point where it's beyond what is allowed. You know, again, the purpose of the open space regulations is to create green space for the benefit of the neighborhood. And I think that this really does that for the benefit of the new lots in this subdivision, as well as for the neighbors on the Smith Ridge Road side. If you'll recall from last presentation, a lot of the houses on that side are actually quite close to the back of the property, because of course they want to get away from Smith Ridge Road. So this area will be very close to their properties.
It's Commissioner Chris again. I'm still struggling with the language which we have in our regulations.
Mhm.
And it says shall provide for these things, and it's enumerated. I did not hear anything that somehow you are enumerating any of these things that you shall provide. And again, it says in determining, I'm reading it directly from the regulations, ma'am, in determining the appropriateness of an area proposed for open space, which is what you are posing on behalf of your client, the commission shall consider POCD recommendations, presence or absence of any existing open space in the area, opportunities for interconnected trails, natural features, needs and resources and such. Also, our POCD says that we can request information, it says here, from the commission, the Conservation Commission and the Land Trust, both of which have opined. You may disagree with what they have to say, such as your privilege. But if I just look at the black letter of what we're required to do, I'm having a difficulty connecting that. And I just wonder whether a fee in lieu offer from the applicant may be a more appropriate way to address these issues. Probably that's not directly and immediately, as money would have to be spent, but that could be used for purchase or enhancement of new open space that is perhaps particularly environmentally sensitive, where there can be a significant increase in environmental protection because of the particular nature of that. So this is what I'm struggling with. So thank you.
Before you respond, Mr. Chris and all the rest of the commissioners, assuming everyone has read the planner's memo and the assessment from Birchman Moses, and I just want to read this out because I want to be crystal clear. The commission cannot require a fee in lieu of the proposed open space if the open space is appropriate and complies with the subdivision regulations, to your point.
We could determine that it's not appropriate.
That's for us to determine.
Yeah.
And if so.
Could you just make sure your mic's on? No one on Zoom can hear
Sorry.
you with the mic off.
Sorry. I say we could determine that the open space is not appropriate and does not comply with the regulations. And then it would be up to the applicant whether the applicant wanted to make an offer.
It's up to the applicant.
And if they didn't, then we just deny it.
That's something we can deliberate and discuss, correct?
Right. I mean, I'm not saying that's my position. I'm
Yep.
just trying to understand, trying to make sure we have a common understanding of what our legal advice is.
Yeah, the legal advice is we cannot require them to submit a fee in lieu, especially since they've satisfied the 10%. It's only if the applicant offers it. if they request to pay for it. Most of the time, that's in which the name tells you, it's fee in lieu of open space provision when a lot does not have the available area for open space.
But as I as I understand the colloquy we just had, there may be a question as to whether, even though they provided 10%, they met the requirements of the statute of the regulations.
Agreed. And we can further deliberate that when we.
So in an effort to try and get some answers to this, I was going to ask, and this seems like an appropriate time, in terms of natural features that are being conserved on the new plan that you just gave us. I know the paper access up on the top, the reason you chose to conserve that is because you said there's a number of trees, large old growth trees there. Can you or Mr. DeAndrea talk a little bit more about what's being conserved in the area on the eastern border of the property? Like what features, if any, exist in there that seem important?
Sure, it's Len DeAndrea. It's similar. We think we meet a number of these, and we can go over them point by point of the open space. But one of the things we try to do on the eastern side is make it as continuous and as thick as possible. Yes, we have the existing driveway that runs for this property, but it's not a barrier. And then it links up in that respect to the wetland areas that's all part of this open space that we're providing. The other part is it is to the backyards of the people of Smith Ridge Road. There are certain things that just can't be met because there aren't some of these other features that aren't on this property. So in this latest revision, yeah, that's a great stand of trees there on the west side, great buffer to the neighbors on the west side. So that was a nice added, it's all upland. And then we tried to make this as continuous as we could along the east side. So it is passive. Certainly as you drive through her or you walk this driveway, it's a passive recreational feature. It's great, it's conserved. It adds the buffer, it helps on the drainage side of it. There could supplement existing open space areas. Well, unfortunately, the only existing open space areas that we have in this property are the backyards of our neighbors. So in that case, it does supplement.
Commissioner Benton here, real quick. Last time when we spoke, there was a big debate over the circular driveway at the end. Is that going to be needed if the field club is would purchase lot 6 and not develop it, which would then free up a lot more space? There would be no need for the driveway.
The driveway is used to access lots 5 and 6, and the circular area is a turnaround for the fire trucks. It's not, I think what's maybe not as clear looking at the plans is that that's not an asphalt circle. One of the other features that's been designed for the project is there is a rain garden in the center of that circle. So the circle's designed, and Mr. DeAndrea worked very closely with the fire marshal so that the fire trucks could easily turn around that circle with the central area as another component of the environment.
Okay, so that has not been considered.
There's also no agreement with the field club right now.
Yeah.
Mr. Engel?
I too heard the argument from the land trust fee in lieu, because my words, I think what they were arguing was the usefulness of the set aside. While it meets the regulation, is not useful, and that's why they said fee in lieu. I think that's what I'm hearing from Commissioner Chris now, which is he's struggling to find out how this set aside is useful as defined by our regulations. It occurs to me that the easiest way you could have done this, and I believe that you're very close to providing a useful, which is why I can see that you're incredulous, because you're saying we've given more than we should, and it's useful, and it's green, and it's got great water management, and it's got great wetland management feature. I mean, it's got all these features. Can't you recognize it? But the part I hear him saying is the connectedness. And so if you'll indulge me in a story here, because I was there for the watching the subdivision when Coastal Construction divided 8 acres across the street from Irwin Park. And suddenly a 25-foot wide strip, only a few hundred square feet of land, became critical to their design to connect green spaces. And they went to Coastal and they begged for a 25-foot strip. And Coastal decided, yeah, no problem. You know, we'll even pay for it. I'm not asking you to pay for it, but I tell you that anecdote because part of the problem here is that, you know, you've done a lot of work with Mr. DeAndrea to provide a very good green solution. And nobody's asked you until Mr. Commissioner Chris tonight just asked you, hey, how does it meet these regulations? But I'm going to be more explicit. I think that the missing piece is the connectedness. And I really think it's only happening on the northernmost part. And it's best illustrated on the third to last colored page of your last presentation, where you can see that it is all connected, with the exception of that portion that gets you out to Brookwood Lane. So I would ask that you consider that as a way, in my mind, to meet what Commissioner Chris is asking.
And I'm sorry if and I appreciate you stating it for me, because I think that was what I was trying to say, is that when you look at this in conjunction with the wetlands, which are only not included in our open space and conservation easement area because your regulations don't allow it, when you include the wetlands, we are protecting in excess of 8 acres under the new plan that was presented today. It's 9 acres. So there's 9 acres of land that is effectively protected in this subdivision. Now, some of it is protected wetlands under your regulations, and the balance of it is the area that is protected under the open space and conservation easement areas. But it is a large interconnected area. Does it connect to other lots? No, because there aren't other lots with open space adjacent to this property. We don't have any control over that. I think you have to look at this property alone. Unlike a property with a 2-lot subdivision and a small little strip of land as open space, this property in and of itself creates a brand new open space for the town of New Canaan that I think should honestly be celebrated with all of the work that they're doing to create this new protected area. And yes, what features are we protecting? There is animal life on the property. There is old growth forest areas, both on the western side and on the eastern side of the property. And those are all being protected with the open space and conservation easements. The conservation easement area, we haven't really talked too much about it at the very, sorry.
But neither a person nor a deer could walk from Brookwood Lane to the field club without walking on your private road. And if they didn't, so there's no way, because it's not connected to either Brookwood. And and now we've heard testimony from the field club that they're actually interested in Lot 6 and actually interested in that area behind the field club. So that's why I bring up the analogy, if you will, with the Green Link, which, but for a 25-foot, strip could have been lost to us. And that also required wetland crossings to make it work. They had to actually go to wetlands and ask for bridges over some of the wetlands to make it work. But at least there was the potential for a connected strip of green space. And that's what I hear Commissioner Chris asking, and what our regulations require.
Well, the field club is not open space or public space.
True. But the deer don't know.
And land trust property
that.
is not all open to the public either.
That's where I was about to go with this. Just to be clear, open space doesn't mean publicly accessible. They're
True,
not the
I'm
same.
thinking about the deer that gets deer fenced in and therefore can't get from one part to another. So
We
I'm
can't-
not asking for a public trail and don't put words in my mouth that I'm asking for a public trail. I'm asking for a useful connected space.
So to be clear, the land trust currently has 36 properties ballpark across New Canaan. 10 of them are public welcome spaces, large parcels like the green belt that's connecting Irwin to the Nature Center, like the property over on Woodridge Circle. There's 10 of them total. There's 11 of them where there's easements for open space that are part of the land trust property that are not publicly accessible. They're isolated little islands. So I'm just not sure how strict we need to be in the interpretation that an open space allocation within a subdivision needs to necessarily be publicly accessible.
This is Commissioner Chris again, 2 points. One, the point, as I understand you're making, Zavatakis, is that while the open space that is being proposed in either of the two proposals may not really check the boxes that I have gone through, because I haven't heard that the boxes were checked. The argument is we've done all this other good stuff, so we should count both. That's what I'm hearing. The second thing I would mention is that under item, 3.04.5J, it says explicitly, the commission may require that any open space land have direct access to a public street through a right-of-way dedicated to public use, and that it be graded and improved to allow for pedestrian access. So that is also something I'm sure this commission will consider. Again, this is on a private drive, as my colleague Commissioner Engel mentioned, that it's not public, but it says explicitly here that we may require it. I'm not opining whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, and if it is something we should require, how to do it, but that again is something. But I guess it's just my sense at this point, I haven't drawn any final conclusions, just to be clear, that given some of the gaps vis-a-vis what we shall consider, that some of that gap, not necessarily all, but some, through a in lieu contribution, which could be used to address any number of land acquisitions or enhancements of, including a potentially highly sensitive land, which we may not even know about or have access to now, but certainly those things do arise from time to time. And I know that's a concern of the Land Trust as well as the Conservation Commission, and they've been fairly explicit about it. So this is just where I'm coming from on this.
Understood. And I guess I would urge the commission to review the prior subdivisions where, again, the open space has been far less comprehensive and less desirable than what has been offered and is proposed in this case. And I do think that you need to look at the proposal comprehensively to see what other aspects are being proposed as part of this proposal. Open space is only one of the considerations that you should be looking at as the Planning and Zoning Commission. You are looking at the feasibility of the lots for development, and you're looking at public welfare. So, like I said, the changes that have been made to that are proposed to the wetlands and the fire access, I think, are considerations that should not be disregarded as you consider this application. And as I said, I disagree. I mean, look, we don't meet. I'm not going to say we meet everything on that list, because of course we don't. I've never, frankly, seen a subdivision in New Canaan that developed a public park. There isn't one. But do we comply with the spirit of the regulation as far as minimizing development, protecting open space in the town? Yes, because of the because of the open space we've granted, because of the larger lot size, and the protection for the forest area that exists on this lot currently. And the improvements to the lot, because again, it is a very highly degraded wetland area. So this proposal will actually vastly improve the entire area.
Commissioner Kuzigan, I noticed that I haven't calculated the exact amount, but the areas are within the borders of the property. So you have setback issues where construction within the setback is not that all that easy to do. And also in the one in the far north, you have some of it is wetland, but also some of it is not wetland, the upland review area. Given the borders of the property of that particular piece of property, and given the placement of the wetlands, really access to that other land you're pretty much boxed in. So even getting there without crossing a wetland would be, I think, extraordinarily difficult. And so again, it seems it's literally on the borders for everywhere. And so, and again, because of setbacks and so forth, again, development is constrained because of that. So I think there's that
a difference though between an area where you could build a structure and an area where there's a conservation easement, right? So by putting a conservation easement, by having this in open space, there will be a conservation easement and open space agreement that will be reviewed by the town attorney. And that agreement will require that these areas be kept in their natural and open space for passive recreation only. That's the standard terminology that's in those documents. So this is definitely a protection for those areas that is not in place. There's, this is private property. They could, it's well within their rights to go in and clear cut these areas and make new lawn areas. And that's, not going to happen. This area will be protected for that good of the community forever. With this open space and conservation easement designation.
Could the homeowners do that? Yes. Would they? Different conversation, but from a technical perspective, I would agree with you, but I'll leave it at that. So those are my comments for the moment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So could I just ask a question?
Yes.
So I can make sure that I understand? Would your open space agreement permit members of the public to access the open space land?
We would anticipate this being maintained by the homeowners association that would be maintaining the driveway. So it would likely not be open to the public simply because there isn't anywhere for the public to park to access this. We wouldn't want anyone to park on the driveway itself is too narrow, and we wouldn't want anyone to park on at that corner on Brookwood Lane.
Is there anything preventing a resident of Brookwood Lane or an adjacent road who happened to be, because Brookwood is a cul-de-sac, who happened to be walking down that road, anything to prevent them from coming down that driveway?
No. It's not going to be gated or anything of that nature.
Well, it would be private property, and it could be it could tell people not to go on private property.
It's a private road. That's correct. It's not a road. I'm sorry. It's a private driveway.
This is Commissioner Herring. I just had a question on one of the materials that you submitted on 325 was the P&Z 325 slide deck, and slide 19 is what I'm looking at. It has a combination of yellow, light green, and darker green, I think. My eyes are not correct right now, but I guess my point is you have open space, conservation, and you have others largely wetlands, I think is the way to characterize it. So you have open space at 2.07, conservation easements at 1.16, and other at 7.58, I think. And I guess my question was, what's the strategy behind using open space versus conservation easements? I understand that you may need to reach a certain lot minimum, and that may be a strategy to do that, or if something's sitting in a particularly curious spot, that might prevent it. But my thinking is that I know staff has a very difficult time maintaining easements and maintaining other elements. So my question would be, why not, for example, on the northern side of the property, you have that big yellow, why not just make that open space versus making it a conservation easement to make it less likely to be violated by the property owner?
Well, so again, the idea was that the open space parcel, and now this is the original open space proposal you're looking at. And I do have the colored map that you're referencing up on the screen now. The idea was to have that open space parcel be one contiguous parcel. So then to the extent that there were other areas, those are separate conservation easements. The open space conservation easement agreement will be with the homeowners association in the town, so it won't be up to private homeowners. Again, it starts to get a little choppy when you start having these other areas. So to the extent it was not part of this one contiguous open space parcel, we just labeled it as conservation easement, but it will be fully protected and with the same language as far as being kept in its natural and open space.
Okay, so there wasn't, I understand how these things evolved, and it might not necessarily evolve in that way. So for example, that lower right yellow element that's adjacent to the open space, you could imagine that being either open space or conserved. The idea was, it's really a matter of, because the open space is actually another lot, is the way I'm reading it, right? So that lot is owned by the homeowners association, whereas the other segments, whether it be wetlands or these easements, are actually owned by the other lots.
Correct.
Yeah, so the strategy is, I just like the strategy of it being not necessarily owned by the lots, because it's then people don't feel like, oh, well, I might as well put my hedge there. I might as well do X, Y, and Z. Okay, I wanted to understand what your logic was there, but that's helpful.
And at certain times it had to do with just the way the lots were configured. For example, in the new proposal that we set forward, that area on the west is all conservation easement instead of open space, because that paper access way has to be part of the lot per your zoning regulations. But this way we're still able to protect it.
Got it. So
by putting a conservation easement on it.
Thank you for that.
Commissioners, any further questions?
If you were to, just a question in terms of logistics, if you were to, for example, include the open space were to include wetlands, I believe the issue is that it passes the threshold of 25%, and that's why the open space that you selected doesn't include wetlands, because it might hit that threshold. Is that
correct? The way the regulations are written is that the open space percentage of wetlands cannot exceed the open space percentage on the lot as a whole. Our lot as a whole is 19.1%. So that was how we chose the open space areas.
Got it. Because you could have, if the makeup was different, you could have, for example, expanded the open space into the other wetlands, or vice versa, depending on the way the makeup fell.
And in fact, I mean, it's candidly, a very interesting provision in the New Canaan regulations. I'll say in many other towns, what is generally done is the open space is the wetlands. And I'm sure that the reason your regulation says that is to prevent people from doing that. So it's certainly understandable, but it ends up on this lot in particular with sort of a nice result where you have quite a bit of protected area on the lot, and we have an opportunity to really enhance the wetlands and the function of this property.
No, I appreciate that. And I think, what you've done in terms of lowering the grade of the wetlands to reinvigorate it makes sense. What I'd be concerned about is, lot 4, the maintenance and the enforcement of that, having someone have a lawn that then creeps into the wetlands and seeps, lawn material into it. in an ideal world, it'd be nice to just have that lot line higher so that people wouldn't have that temptation. But I understand the regs prevent that.
And certainly, you know, as has been discussed before, when each one of these lots is developed, there'll be a opportunity for both the Wetlands Commission to review the proposed development, and in all likelihood, this commission as well. You know, one thing that's often done when you have a property with wetlands on it is you put up like a boulder demarcation line so that it's very clear where the wetlands are. And those are the sorts of things that could be part of the development of these individual lots.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Anyone else? And just so we put a pin in it, I'll ask the question, is the applicant interested in making an additional fee in lieu submission or payment?
No, we feel that we've complied with the New Canaan zoning regulations. We've provided an excess of the open space that's required both in the original application and in the alternative that was provided today. And we feel that this really goes very far in protecting this property.
Okay, thank you.
I have one additional question. I know that the width of the access way requires us to grant a modification for section 1.05. Could you just, I know it's because it's narrower, but can you say what it's supposed to be and what it is in certain locations, just so we're clear on what that modification is?
Sure. So that is the for the driveway as it goes down to access lots 5 and 6. The driveway starts, the minimum for a shared driveway in your regulations is 16 feet. So we start at 18 feet. It goes down to 16 feet along lots 8 and 9. And then after lot 9, when it's only serving 2 lots, 5 and 6, it does go down to 14 feet for a stretch, which is the exact width of the existing driveway, and then back out to 16 as to get around the traffic circle at the end.
Okay, so it's a modification from 16 feet to 14 feet in select locations.
Correct.
And the private drive, as it comes off of Brookwood, it's specifically delineated with parallel property lines on either side of that drive as it goes past lot 8. But when it gets to lot 9, am I correct in understanding that that private drive is actually on the lot 9 property?
So the driveway is private property, the entire length of it. So it is, the driveway is part of lot 9 the entire time.
The entire time?
Correct, except for the traffic circle, which is partially 5 and
See that?
partially 6.
So even the leg of the driveway that goes past lots 7 and 8, that leg of driveway belongs to lot 9?
So if I may lend DeAndrea, that to create the proper frontage, the parallel lines is the access way to lot 9. And we have that shared driveway within that access way. Once we get to lot 9, we don't need the double lines, but you'll see that there's a dash line that represents the easement for the driveway and utilities as it continues on.
I see that. I'm just curious why that.
Lot 7 has frontage on Brookwood Lane.
Yeah.
And then lot 8 has frontage onto the access way.
Right.
And then the access way is owned by lot 9. And then lots 5 and 6, their frontage is onto the paper access way onto Brookwood Lane on the west side.
So why wouldn't lot 9 need frontage onto the access way?
Because it owns the access way. Its frontage is on Brookwood Lane by virtue of the end of the access way. So 9 is the rear lot.
I thought I heard Mr. DeAndrea say something different. So
sorry,
the Serpentine Road that's 16 feet, 16, 14? Whatever that width is, the 2 parallel lines, that access way belongs to lot 9?
Correct. And then through lot 9, there's an easement established to continue the driveway to the cul-de-sac circle, providing access and utilities for 5 and 6.
I'm just.
Yeah, the access way and the width of the access way is different than the driveway that we're proposing, the paved driveway. The paved driveway is shown on a different survey, which I can pull up if you'd like, but the access way is the legal paper access way required for the lot 9, which is the rear lot. And
Right, and that has to be 25 feet wide too, and that is, the two parallel lines are 25 feet.
25.
I mean, for rest, just hopefully this doesn't cause confusion, but similarly, does lot 6 own the whole paper access way going to Brookwood Lane for reciprocity?
correct.
You got that part.
Right, so the way your regulations are written, you can have the rear lot owns the access way to the street, and you can have one lot off of an access way in front of the rear lot.
Which is lot 8.
Yep.
Correct.
Doesn't have frontage on Brookwood Lane.
Correct.
That helps. Thank you. Commissioners, any further questions?
What was your answer to the intervener who talked about the sightline difficulties? I would imagine that we're going from, since your property, your subdivision will result in 9 houses where there are currently 2. His problem is also your problem. Do you think that the town needs to take action on that corner? Do you agree with him it's dangerous, or do you not agree it's dangerous?
So the intersection in question is about 700 feet away from this property. So it's an off-site condition that impacts everyone in this area. I do think that my clients would be happy to work with the neighborhood and with the town if there was a way to improve that intersection, but it's, you know, it is an existing condition that they were aware of when they purchased this property, and they're prepared to work within the confines of the roadways that exist.
You mentioned the tree. The tree is a town tree.
Oh, yes. The tree that he showed some photos of with the large root structure is on town property. And there is it wasn't shown in that presentation, there's a mirror on the far side of where you're exiting Brookwood Lane that I assume is helpful for sightlines there.
In terms of, there was additionally neighbor concern on duration of construction, not just traffic and access at that intersection, but just volume of traffic from construction vehicles. Your proposal here is not to, other than creating the access road and establishing the right boundaries for each of these subdivided lots. You're not developing any of these lots as part of this application, correct?
That is correct.
What level of construction will there be on, as part of your application, what level of construction will there be on this lot?
I can talk. Len DeAndrea. So the idea would be, if you're going to sell the lots, to provide the infrastructure so you can build a lot. So what we would see the developer do is come in here and put in the conduits in the driveway to provide electric and communications. That may be, to the most part, the extent of it in order to sell a lot.
Probably the fire.
Oh, sorry, correct. Oh, very important too. And also do the fire line. Absolutely.
Correct.
And the drainage for the driveway as well.
Correct.
Yes.
With the on the drainage for the driveway, with that lower driveway going through the wetlands and the open space, is there, there's been a lot of talk about the salt and salting the roads, and
don't like it. So what we typically do, and we would do it for this.
You don't like the salt?
We don't like salt. So
Okay.
I opposed it. I could tell you some stories. So what we would do, and we've drafted one, and I think that's part of what we want to finalize too, is a drainage maintenance agreement. And part of that is what you can and can't apply to the driveway. If calcium chloride is needed, fine, but not, sodium, okay, got it wrong there. Excuse me?
Potassium?
No, 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 calcium chloride versus sodium chloride. The calcium is fine, the sodium is not, it's not needed. The town of New Canaan has no longer puts sand in it because it's just a nuisance and it clogs the drains, but they do use sodium. So what we would do is restrict the use of sodium in the drainage maintenance agreement that must be followed.
And I'll just note that the drainage maintenance agreement is a requirement of the wetlands permit that was issued, and then a potential condition you could, additionally add that in, that language has to be provided to us by the time the driveway's done being constructed. And it would be reviewed by the town engineer.
Again,
ensure
we
compliance.
don't want to belabor that, but we went through that extensively. We have redundancy in our drainage system. We start out with
I
catch
do, I
basins,
do, I do recall you mentioning that. And then
we have the natural features.
in terms of site prep, would you potentially, I think, attorney, you mentioned the idea of that sometimes boulders are lining the wetlands and such to kind of help delineate that. Is that something that you would do?
That would be that I was talking about as far as the lot development. As far as the work on the driveway, there's extensive protection within the plans that have been submitted and will be reviewed by wetland staff and town staff during that construction process, as far as silt fencing and all the rest. There's also a requirement of a phasing plan. So believe everything will be very well protected. And as I stated, at the same time, we'll be going in and doing the wetlands remediation while we're working on the roadway. That's another part that would need to be completed at the beginning.
Phasing plan for your scope of work?
For the scope of work for the driveway, yes, correct. And I believe you have the inland wetlands permit in your files, and you can see the conditions in there that include that.
Town engineer also called for similar conditions in her letter.
Yeah, wetlands incorporated all of her requirements.
And there were also, I saw today, some conditions from the fire marshal that, of course, we would
There
anticipate
was a
being
supplemental letter from the fire
supplemented in as conditions.
Commissioners, anything further? We ready to close this application? Anything further, Ms. Sabatakis?
I mean, I think I'll just say in closing that, this has really been a very sensitively designed project. If you go back to the very beginning with my clients deciding, rather than really disrupting this property with brand new driveways and cutting through the center of the wetlands, they're reutilizing this existing driveway. It's been very sensitively designed to improve the habitat on the lot. And, frankly, I've never seen a fire support being part of a private development of this nature. So I think these are all really great positives for the community and positives for the town that should be considered. And it was unanimously approved by the Wetlands Commission, as I mentioned, with very high marks. They stated numerous times how they thought we'd gone above and beyond their requirements and above and beyond what was needed, but they were happy and definitely included it all in their approval. And, we've been approved by the fire marshal, by the health department, by the town engineer, and I hope that this commission will feel the same and approve this application as submitted.
I have one final question.
Sure.
Was there a reason that lot 4 wasn't part of the access off of the private drive and the turnaround circle? Was that ever considered in addition to lot 5 and 6?
It wasn't, because lot 4 does have frontage onto the traffic circle at the end of Brookwood Lane. Also, we then, there is an existing driveway that starts to curve back around towards 4 that is adjacent to that wetlands area. We felt that ending the driveway at the turnaround, once you get past that point, it kind of turns into gravel anyway. We felt that was the most appropriate, since you could easily access 4 off of Brookwood Lane.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay, this application's closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
And starting with the notice of intervention, and you have to vote on the notice of intervention before you vote on the subdivision, for
Mhm.
process purposes.
Well, let's start with deliberation first. So commissioners, we do have, Ms. Carey was kind enough to put together the second page of your handouts tonight, the notice of intervention motion, and then potential approval conditions. Before I read those and get into those, let me hear from the commissioners. What is everyone thinking? Any concerns, any observations you'd like to share right now? Well, okay, let me start first then. I think, I personally think the latest plan that was handed out by the applicant this evening, which includes the conservation easement on the west side of the property along lots 4, 5, and 6. I think that is a very beneficial and goes a long way to preserving that natural buffer between these lots and the adjacent neighbors on the east side of that area. There is I'm sure all of you have been there. There's an existing driveway that goes down to, I believe it's three homes on that side. So the last thing we would want is for an additional development in that area. I also feel that the proposed open space, as well as the slight enlargement of the open space on the southeast corner and northeast corner with the conservation easement, help to further create a natural buffer and maintain that natural landscape as a buffer between the road, this new subdivision, and all of the neighbors on Smith Ridge Road. You know, the key here was the existing driveway. They didn't want to move that. I know that was a big deliberating point on the part of wetlands, trying to minimize the expansion of that driveway or relocation in order to keep the wetlands and the areas around that drive as, I won't say untouched, but as preserved as possible. And I think that goes a long way towards doing that. Any further observations?
I'll just say that, I mean, I think we will probably deliberate over the value of the open space, but I do think having as much of it as possible, both open space and conservation easement in a contiguous strip of land, does provide, you know, benefits beyond just preserving natural features, but also giving like a wildlife corridor for animals to passage through that area. So I still see value in it, even if the rest of the commission may not.
Commissioner Chris, I'm still struggling with the dedicated space, especially along a strip on the east side, some of which is quite narrow. Having seen that, it's a few trees, but often very scrubby. And I think the ecological, I have heard nothing from the applicant, excuse me, that this particular long strip is of substantial environmental value, given its location between the property line of the entire property and the roadway. It becomes a question of, gee, what am I going to do with it, frankly. And if we look at the piece on the far north side, which is that sort of little peninsula, some of it is wetlands, and then the non-wetlands is either in a setback or sort of boxed in. So again, I see that as land that probably is going to stay where it is now. And so I think it's of very marginal environmental value, except for the wetlands part, which certainly is. But again, I would go back to our regulations, it says we shall, and these boxes really are not being checked in any substance. Either they're not being checked at all, or they're only being very marginally checked. And so my own sense is that given the lack of meeting what shall be provided, that
That's not what it says. It says shall consider. Not that the applicant shall provide. It says that the commission shall consider.
I'm reading 3.041 as provided in CGS section 8-25, every subdivision shall provide for open space in order to provide A through G.
And not a single one of our subdivisions provides all of those.
Well, if that has been the case, I would rather not make the same mistake twice, in my view.
I just don't see how you can provide every single one of those items.
I hear you, but I'm trying to determine if really any of these are. Also on C, in determining the appropriateness of an area proposed for open space and other, and other public purposes, the commission shall consider recommendations of the plan of conservation development. Matches that. The presence or absence of any existing open spaces in the area. There are some across their area.
We can go by one recommendation of the POCD. Just by virtue of establishing open space, doesn't that satisfy one of the goals of the POCD? Because the POCD is not specific in terms of what the open space is supposed to be constituted of.
Well, it does speak to environmentally sensitive land too, but the point I'm making is that, is it zero? No, but it's on the marginal side, and this is the concern I have. And so it's just the sense I'm wrestling with is whether some of the deficits in each of these enumerated points be alleviated by a fee in lieu if the applicant chooses to make that offer. We can't require it. I understand that. I'm not suggesting we do so, but this is the issue I'm wrestling with, Mr. Chairman.
We've asked the applicant's declined. We can't require it.
Understood.
I think the fee in lieu discussion is moot.
It would seem so, which becomes an issue of how should that be considered, all these factors by the commission, and whether they, as mentioned in the note from our attorney, let me get this, here it is. It says, therefore, if an applicant proposes appropriate, i.e. proper open space, it should be accepted, rather than requiring a payment in lieu or in addition to the open space. If the open space is not proper, as determined by the commission can request a payment in lieu or negotiate with the applicant for some other open space or transfer of land. No payment of lieu is agreed to by the applicant, or such negotiations are unsuccessful. The application could, in theory, be denied because the provision of open space deemed proper by the commission or a payment in lieu is a requirement of the regulations. So we can't deny it. The issue is just to sort of meet the proper level. And that's the point I'm making, is that I'm wrestling whether it does in fact do so.
Understood. Now, I also want to be clear, you've used the phrase substantial value. Is it of substantial value as an open space? That is not one of the criteria in the open space regulations. It doesn't need to be of substantial value. It's up to the commissioners to interpret what items A through G constitute as being either all applicable or some of them are applicable. For example, protect and conserve natural features.
Yep.
You could say, yeah, they are doing that. They're protecting certain buffer zones on the east and west side as open space. Protect and conserve community resources and or cultural resources. Not sure how you're going to check that box with this particular subdivision. I'm not really sure how that box was checked on any subdivision.
Could I
So,
jump in for a moment? Just to make sure we're all on the same page, and understanding Attorney Gelderman's, memo. I did also speak to him before he issued this memo.
Yep.
So number 1 in 3.04 is copy and paste from the statute. And the statute is describing what the commission could include in their regulations. So you need to be comparing it to 5C within 3.04, because those are your actual, when Attorney Gelderman mentioned appropriate land, those 1 through 5, those are your markers for, is this appropriate open space? So
Okay.
just to clarify, 1 is a regurgitation of the statute and the authority the commission could have to include in their regulations. 5C is what you actually included in your regulations.
okay. Which is the one Mr. Chris brought up earlier.
Yeah. So for example, the point on natural features, which becomes I'm not sure that's been a defined term in any legislation or in courts. I'm getting a shake of the head from Ms. Carey, so I'll
I don't
spot her
believe
on
there
that
is
one.
an exact definition, so it is up to the interpretation of the commission.
I brought this up. So for example, is there some endangered species that's sort of living there and has made a home? Certainly that would be an issue I would consider with great seriousness, as I think other members of the commission would. Are there some endangered plants growing there, or there's something particular about that is rare or of substantive environmental benefit because it just happens to be there as opposed to somewhere else? Certainly that would be very persuasive for me. But when I go through C, which I've enumerated and put in the record, I'm just, again, struggling to see how these are really being met here. That's the issue I'm struggling with. So I'll leave it at that. I think I've stated it as clearly as I can.
Yeah. And I think those 2 examples are valid examples, but those are types of examples that in this particular application, I would think it would have been the intervener's responsibility to highlight those and bring in a professional to prove that those exist and that we should consider them for preservation of open space.
Well, certainly, could the interveners have approached the matter differently? Yes. But, again, they are come to the conclusions and make the arguments they feel are appropriate. So it is still the responsibility of the commission to determine the appropriateness of an area proposed for open space, and the commission shall consider. So we are required to follow the rules. So
whether or not the interveners proved anything.
No, I'm just saying that.
Doesn't relieve us in our duties to make.
But it's not up to us to prove that. It's not up to us to introduce that as an issue.
But it can be.
It can be.
It
I disagree,
can be.
Dan, because why are you saying that if there's an issue that the interveners didn't bring up, we can't discuss
I
it?
was using interveners as an example. We have nothing to an endangered species. We have nothing to go by to say that there's an endangered species on that property.
I would note that the applicant, if I were the applicant and I found an endangered species living on land I was going to deed over as conservation easement, I would tell the commission about it. I would, because that's a pretty persuasive argument, in my opinion. Or there could be rare wildflowers or something else of substance, saying we want to dig up an endangered plant species. I'm not sure it's going to go over real well with many people. And that's the point I'm making. And again, the applicant had the opportunity to bring up these matters, did not list anything. So I assume they would have. They are selfishly motivated to come up with such data.
They have the burden.
I think let's just, when you read this subsection C, it is the commission shall consider. It's not findings. It's not criteria. It's not that you have to meet each and every one, right? That would have been written differently, right? In our regulations, we have criteria, we have findings where you say you have to enumerate each and every one. This says shall consider. You're taking this into consideration. So you could weigh more heavily, point 1, the recommendations in the plan of conservation and development, as opposed to say subsection 4, the opportunity. And also says the opportunity, that's a whole other issue. The opportunity to preserve or protect significant natural features, right? So it's a consideration. It is not a enumerated findings that you need to make in order to approve. So I think in contextually and how you interpret the text here, that's to me a more logical reading.
I agree. Any further questions, comments?
You do still have to vote on the notice of intervention before you get anywhere
understand.
close to voting on the subdivision.
I
So
do
if
have
you're-
one question. I'm just looking at the open space provision earlier in our zones. I guess it's 3.6B. It talks about this idea of open space definition.
This is in the zoning regulations or
Where? In the
subdivision?
subdivision requirements?
No, it's 3.6 flexibility for open space provision.
So that is the zoning regulations, and that is specific to if you're trying to get a dimensional exception in the for the sake of providing open space.
Okay, it just defines open space differently.
Oh, okay, understood.
Okay.
One other point, which the interveners brought up, which is really not our turf, but it's the intersection. Again, it's someone else's job. It's the police commission, I think, puts up signs and so forth. I would just ask the question, review my ignorance, is this something that the commission, perhaps if it feels this is a big deal, perhaps recommend to the police commission, they look at the intersection and take a fresh look and see whether this is a public safety issue. There are any number of tough intersections in town where you have to go through the stop sign to see whether you can turn left or right. And I just suggest whether that may be something we would care to do. Again, it's someone else's decision on that.
But is it relevant to this application?
No, but certainly public safety is something I think about, but
I mean, we can make a recommendation. I don't know if it's police commission or Department of Public Works. It would be.
I think this police commission does like stop signs and so forth and so forth. That's my recollection, but.
Sarah, how would you enforce this? Like, how would you enforce the open space in this particular scenario?
So it's all a function of how the conservation easement is written, but I'll use the Greenlee Road language as an example, since that was a subdivision that was approved by the commission in 2017. And that is a conservation easement, and those lots are actually being developed right now. So it's typically enforced just, through random inspections. And, typically those random inspections only happen when there is active construction going on the site, because when you are purchasing this land, you do become aware of the easements on the property. And then, in the event anyone were to violate the conservation easement, as long as it's written in a way that gives us enforcement powers, we have the ability to take, standard zoning enforcement actions by issuing cease and desist. If that isn't enough, we can levy fines onto, the violator. So that's the general, enforcement.
Building permit.
The reason I ask is I guess I'm concerned about, how much you have on your plate and how much staff has on their plate and against these sort of things. And I wonder, are there circumstances where, this land is ceded to the town or like that 25-foot access way, because I just feel like your governance of some small strip of land like this that, ends up getting, forgotten about, it may not necessarily fulfill the properness of the open space.
So I disagree with that. I'm not particularly concerned about the capacity to enforce these things. We do have them all over town. They do get documented. We're not driving by, on a monthly basis or anything of that nature, but it is easily documented and it is not difficult to, stay on top of these things. So I'm not concerned about that.
Okay, no, that's helpful.
I'd like to make an observation about a different subject within this. Or are we still on open space?
No.
Okay.
Mike is yours.
Thank you. Well, let me get the mic positioned correctly then. First of all, I think this is a very well-designed project. Very sensitive. and it deals with a lot of the issues that will make this project successful or not. And I think it deals well with those issues, with the exception of one item. And this will involve the intersection at Country Club and Brookwood. So at the last meeting, we had the fire commissioner here. I don't think he addressed sufficiently the ability to fight a fire on this property. When I asked some tough questions about that, he said he couldn't answer and that he'd have to bring in somebody else. I don't remember exactly who that was. But there were a lot of pieces and parts to fighting a fire here, one of which is getting to the hydrants. I'm not that concerned with that, except at the intersection of Brookwood and Country Club. I am concerned with the ability to get there in time to fight a fire because of all the things they'll have to do once they're there. He didn't seem to be able to articulate the timing issues and the pieces and parts that would have to be put together to actually make a successful firefighting effort. Now we're in a situation now where fires are raging throughout the country. This is a perfect place for that to happen. So I think we need a fire plan that goes beyond and above what was stated in the last meeting that we had. Now, complicating that is the intersection at Brookwood and Country Club. Now, there is a zoning regulation for that, section 6.9A, visibility at intersections. And it states what that visibility is, what is required for that visibility. And I don't see how, as brought up by one of the public members, how that visibility is available. In fact, it's not. And it violates the section 6.9, as far as I can see.
Is 6.9, would that be applicable to us? Because
So-
that intersection is not part of this property.
Yeah, so 6.9 is specific more to corner lots. You can't have a fence blocking an intersection. I hear the point, but again, that would be the responsibility of other town entities, not the Planning and Zoning Commission, to improve that intersection. There are definitely strategies to improve that intersection, but that is not our purview.
Okay, so specifically, Sarah, the image at 6.9 that was drawn, it has two corner lots intersecting exactly as this does. And it shows what the restricted areas are. And it clearly shows that this intersection violates those restricted areas. And normally I wouldn't be as concerned, but I am in terms of a fire truck navigating this in a time of emergency. So I think it ties in. It's not part of the property, but certainly ties into the concerns I have about firefighting on the property.
I would just say that regulation, its purpose is meant to give me enforcement power when a private property owner is obstructing an intersection. In this case, the obstruction is a tree and a grade change that the town has authority over. So again, you also have to think about zoning regulations are specifically only pertain to private property. This little corner we're talking about is not private property. That's the town right of
It's in
way.
the town street easement.
So
No, I assume that there was a town setback there. But it's something the town I believe, should work on with the property owner once they're improving the property. Because I think
But the point we're trying to make is you can't link the two. I know you want to, we all want to.
Right.
We all heard what the intervener was saying, but legally we can't link the two.
Okay, so let's just move on to the firefighting ability on the property itself.
Okay.
I just don't think we've gotten a good explanation on that.
So I can speak to that a little bit. The fire marshal's role is to regulate building safety and compliance with building fire code. The fire chief and the firefighters, they are the ones doing the operational firefighting if there is an actual structural fire. So Paul Payne is the fire code, regulator for structures, and he was not providing specifics on response time and actual processes for fighting the fire, because that is not his expertise nor his purview. And the subdivision regulations are specific that the fire marshal needs to approve the suppression systems to make sure that firefighters have access to proper water sources to do what it is they do. So we don't have specific standards in our subdivision regulations to say that the fire department has to be able to get to this fire 3 minutes after a call is made or anything of that capacity. So your purview is specifically, has the applicant provided the water infrastructure to meet the satisfaction of the fire marshal's requirements? And
Is that in the zoning regula? I
That's in
tried
the
to
s-
look for that in the zoning regulations. I couldn't find it. Can
so
you
it's in
point
the
that out?
subdivision regulations. There's a specific section around.
What's the section number?
I'm trying to pull that up.
I have it memorized, Sarah? You have everything else memorized.
Subdivision, I don't have memorized as much, first one in a while. Fire
Access
protection
ways
is,
3.07.
it's 4.08,
What page?
page 32.
32?
Separate.
Fire protection, and it talks about different standards. And it's essentially subject to fire marshal approval.
Mm-hmm.
And the fire marshal, I've been in close communication with him throughout this whole process, and he spoke at the last meeting and he submitted a supplementary memo this afternoon to me with a few conditions of the standards for how it needs to be constructed. He is comfortable with what the applicant has proposed.
This is Commissioner Chris again, on an entirely different topic. It's a question from Ms. Carey on the conditions you wrote as far as suggestions to the commission. On number 2, it says easement language shall be submitted to you for review. Review implies approval.
Yeah, we can change that to approval.
Okay, I just want to be sure
Yeah,
that
it does, yeah.
there's not some
No.
slip of the tongue that you would need to look at it and opine positively on it. So I would just suggest that if the commission in its wisdom decides to approve it, that this condition say review and approval, just to make it explicit that you would need to approve the language to ensure that it's doing what it is it's intended to do.
Yeah, we may want to change it to also say the proposed open space and conservation easement language.
That was my next question of whether those are separate items, and I know they're separate, but stating them both might be better. So I would fine. So it would then say, just to be clear, your edit would be, Ms. Carey, the proposed conservation easement and open space language shall be submitted to the town planner for review and approval. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. That's my
So can we
point,
just
Mr. Chairman.
repeat the discussion about fire, fire access issue that we were talking about?
Yep.
You said you got a memo today. What did the memo state?
So it's posted on the website under transmittals.
There's actually 2 memos from the fire marshal.
Yeah.
It's transmittals from town departments within the 82 Brookwood Lane, or transmittals from departments. So the fire marshal in February, I think that was the second most recent one.
February 21st.
Yep, my Wi-Fi has decided to start working. So in February, he had a few remaining discrepancies, including requesting truck turning figures, which were provided, and discussion of installation of a dry hydrant. And then his memo to me today: upon review of the 82 Brookwood Lane subdivision application, I would like to reiterate the following. The access road leading to the pond shall be capable of supporting 75,000 pounds for fire department apparatus. There shall be a supply point, which is a dry hydrant, and a discharge point located in the vicinity of the pond along the access way. These points shall be located in conjunction with New Canaan Fire Department and fire protection engineer. The applicant shall retain the services of a fire protection engineer. The supply and discharge system shall be designed by the fire protection engineer. This system shall be constructed of ductile iron pipe or similar and shall be capable of flowing 1,000 gallons per minute to the termination point. The termination point shall be a fire hydrant located on Brookwood Lane at a location approved by the New Canaan Fire Department. And those are, while he doesn't state it, in my opinion, those are construction standards based on the plans, the preliminary or concept plans that have been provided by the applicant on all of the documents provided to you throughout this application process.
So we don't have to adopt all those provisions.
No, I would recommend, and again, I wrote my proposed conditions before I got this memo, but you could add an additional condition that just says fire infrastructure is constructed to the standard of the fire marshal.
Okay. Is that satisfactory?
I hope so. I think that, you know, the discussion of open space is important, but I believe the ability to suppress a fire and fight a fire is the most important thing we'll probably be dealing with on this site.
I mean, I will just say the way the internal communication works between myself and the other town staff, I would not have recommended that you all close this public hearing if the fire department weren't comfortable with
That memo goes to that, in that direction. Appreciate that.
Anything further, commissioners? Okay, so we have the notice of intervention motion. You all have it in front of you, and we can either acknowledge that they have or have not satisfied this. I'll read the motion or the notice, and then
I would recommend discussing, and that whenever someone is ready to make a motion, they should just read that document, because that's meant to just be, since it's complicated legal language, but
okay.
I would deliberate, and then whenever you're ready, whoever wants to make the motion can read that.
That's fine.
Well, I'll start maybe some discussion, and the quote is reasonably likely to have the effect of unreasonably polluting, impairing, or destroying the public trust in the air, water, or other natural resources of the state, unquote. I agree with the applicant that not only are they conserving the existing wetlands, but they're restoring previously degraded wetlands. And yes, they've done that, and I think that's a very good thing. I have some issues with some other topics, but that's not the issue here. And so I think some of the actions they've taken regarding drainage, restoring essentially a stream for above ground as opposed to below ground, other wetlands remediation issues, I think are very positive. And so I think if we look at the things, how they're touching the property, propose to touch the property, I cannot see how I can vote saying that the interveners have proven this. I just can't get there. So that's my sense of things.
I'm kind of there as well. I think the applicant has gone to extensive lengths to maintain the integrity and reinstate the integrity of the wetlands.
I agree.
While keeping the drive as an accessible drive. I just don't see where what's being proposed would be polluting, impairing, or destroying anything to do with the air, water, or other natural resources.
I think this motion isn't really about the quality of the application. It's really about the interveners. Have the interveners proven? I don't think the interveners even alleged. And I think back to just in the last year, we've had interveners come in the last couple of years and talk about the environmental impact of maybe a CARP project or the St. Luke's project, right? Interveners said this will harm our water quality. Right. No such allegation was made here that wells would be harmed, water quality would be harmed, runoff. So I think it's an easy one. This motion is about interveners and proving.
Really, the only allegations were traffic.
I suspect that they probably made those arguments before the Wetlands Commission, where they were also interveners, and given that the Wetlands Commission did not find that they met their burden of proof, I think it would be difficult for us to find that they did.
Agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move then, if I may.
You may.
Okay, I move that the commission finds that the interveners have not proven that the subdivision of 82 Brookwood into 9 lots and the construction of associated infrastructure improvements is, quote, reasonably likely to have the effect of unreasonably polluting, impairing, or destroying the public trust in the air, water, or other natural resources of the state, close quote. The interveners have not set forth information within the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission that is sufficient, credible, and quantifiable evidence to prove the allegations set forth in the petition of intervention.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further comments?
Can we go back to the open space comment? I just wanted.
You gotta vote on
We're not
this.
voting on the.
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna vote on this first?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Go ahead.
Okay, so the vote, a yay vote on this is to agree with Mr. Chris's motion that they have not proven the burden of proof to satisfy the intervention motion. Dan Radman, I vote yes. Krista Nielsen,
Yes.
John Chris,
Yes.
Chris Herring,
Yes.
John Engel,
Yes.
Paul Knag,
Yes.
Alan Swerdlow,
Yes.
Tom Benton,
Yes.
Eric Knowles.
Yes.
All right, and the second portion of this is the actual subdivision and any potential conditions. Everyone has in front of them the first 4 that Ms. Carey put together. And I'm paraphrasing here. The first one is compliance with the Inland Wetlands Commission ruling. The second one, Mr. Chris read earlier, the slightly modified one about the proposed open space and conservation easement language and going to the town planner for review and approval. And third one is prior to the sale of the first lot, proof of establishment of a HOA, homeowners association, or other suitable entity submitted to the town and to entity responsible for ensuring stormwater maintenance plan, fire protection easement, access lane, and all open space are properly maintained and protected. Fourth one is the physical driveway access for lots 5 and 6 shall always be via the shared driveway that also serves 7, 8, and 9.
I'll just note that if the commission looks favorably on having a conservation easement over that access way, condition 4 is not necessary.
Repeat that.
So if the commission decides to vote in favor of the conservation easement now being added to the top of lots 4, 5, and 6, you don't need condition 4.
Sarah, is conservation easement the same as open space?
No.
So the open space, the number 5 here says the open space has to be 10%. And we can waive the condition that 25% has to be wetlands, or doesn't. So that whole conversation about it needing to be 25% or not 25% wetlands, we could totally waive that. So I don't know why we were even concerned about that.
So you're asking 2 different things, whether conservation easement and open space are the same things as, I don't know if you have a question about that or not, but
Yeah, because I mean, I'm just saying, it says the regs say it open space has to be 10% of the total area of the subdivision.
I mean, typically, the way these subdivisions work is you want to comply with the regulations as much as possible, and you're trying to avoid asking for a waiver of the regulation. Like typically, the regulations are written because you want someone to be able to fully comply with them. So I don't think faulting the applicant for wanting to try to comply with a regulation you all have, is necessarily logical in that sense.
I was just wondering why you didn't mention the idea of waiving that reg 25%.
Personally, I think encumbering wetlands and conservation easements is, redundant and unnecessary because you can't develop them anyway. They can't be filled in. The most you're going to do is put a boardwalk in, which if you put a conservation easement on it, you can't put a boardwalk on
The
it. So
difference is the deeded right, right? So the difference in my mind is that all of these wetlands that are here are part of these lots, whereas the open space is a separate deeded piece of property. So, which is a totally different level of control.
I hear you. Again, so going back to the open space versus conservation easement, that's the same thing. So the conservation easements are also at the mercy of private property owners, whereas that open space chunk is at the mercy of the HOA. I mean, I didn't think that there was a need to recommend that the open space or that the wetlands needed to be owned solely by the HOA. I don't believe that that's been done anywhere in New Canaan and didn't really ever come up as something that made sense to recommend.
Okay, I was just looking at this dedication of land, and it seems like the way to exert control or reduce complexity is to have it open space versus conservation easements, which are much more complex to maintain. Okay, that was my question. Just on page 15 of the subdivision. Thank you.
We have to decide whether to accept the first or second draft of the open space.
That's true. That's also one of the items.
I mean, if someone wants to move for approval, I would like to see the second draft be the one that we adopt. I think that
I
it's
would
more
agree.
comprehensive. I think that it does protect more natural features on the site, including the old growth, large stand of trees up on the western edge.
So I just have a question in terms of your conditions on number 3 with the concept of the HOA shall be submitted to the town for review and approval. I mean, I assume that's limited to matters that are only, under the guise of the town, right? You're not going to obviously approve how much everybody has to pay a year and that sort of thing. So I think it needs to be a little more specific that
So
it's limited to.
The intention is to just ensure that some entity is being established to ensure, the 3 items are properly maintained and protected. So, I mean, that's the intent of it. So if you have a recommendation for how to make that clearer.
I mean, yeah, just to add language, what's in the purview of the town to review and approve in the HOA.
Water maintenance plan, the fire protection easement, like it's essentially to make sure that someone is maintaining those things.
Shall be submitted to the town for review and approval, limited to ensuring.
Okay, limited to ensuring.
And Sarah, curious, the other thing it says in the regs here is that, when the subdivider does designate open space, the preference of the town or ownership is, number 1, the town should own the open space. Number 2, a nonprofit owns it. And number 3, a neighborhood association.
So
I'm curious why we didn't discuss the idea of the open space being ceded to the town or a nonprofit.
So these regulations were written and have not been touched since 2008. So I can't speak to why in 2008 that was the preference, but my understanding right now is that the town is not looking to have more land under its jurisdiction and its responsibility to maintain. So I did not think it was prudent to recommend that. And I think that language may be meant more in the event that there is some sort of subdivision that would be able to create some sort of park or something. And if you were, creating a legitimate park that, town residents could go to, you would want that in the town's ownership or something like a land trust who has the ability to maintain that. But since this again is not providing open space that is likely to be publicly accessible if you accept it, having it in someone else's ownership to me did not seem like a prudent recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I have one edit on 3. We look at condition 2, it says town planner. Condition 3 says town. Wanting to be consistent, to say town planner in 3.
So, I mean, I would honestly change them all to town rather than town planner, because this is some of these things are gonna go to the town attorney. Number one is gonna go to inland wetlands, town engineer,
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
I
Wanna
would
use
just say town.
Precise language,
Yep.
so,
Keep it, take out planner and item 2.
okay, fair enough. Make it consistent, done.
Are we all, commissioners, are we all in agreement that the modified site plan that was submitted tonight with the additional conservation easement on the west side, that is the preferred plan?
Yes.
Yes.
Just for clarity, did you say east and west side?
I started to say east. I said west. I corrected myself.
Well,
It is
It's on
east as
both,
well. It's on
but the
both.
what's new is on the west.
make sure that we're on the same page or the same sheet when it comes.
Same
to-
sheet that was submitted tonight. That's dated. Okay, Mr. DeAndrea, where'd you put a date on this? Lower left, April 9th? Yeah, that's the latest one.
Right, yeah.
Dated April 9th, 2025. Then as part of that, item 4 on the conditions goes away.
Yep.
And then the
Fourth would be the fire.
fire infrastructure becomes 4. The last item was fire infrastructure to be constructed to the recommendations and standards of the fire marshal. Okay, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the subdivision application based on the alternative site plan submitted this evening, which increased the amount of open space.
Dated April 9th.
The document is dated April 9th.
Yep.
2025. Subject to the following conditions. Number 1, in accordance with the decision of the Inland Wetlands Commission and their permit to conduct a regulated activity, number IW 24-43, a stormwater maintenance plan shall be submitted to the town upon completion of the shared driveway. 2, the proposed conservation easement language shall be submitted to the town for 3, prior to the sale of the first lot, proof of the establishment of a homeowners association, HOA, or other suitable entity shall be submitted to the town for review and approval.
Limited to ensuring this entity.
Limited
to ensuring
that the stormwater maintenance plan, the fire protection easement, and access lane in all open space areas are properly maintained and protected. 4, can you help me with that? What did we say 4?
The fire suppression infrastructure shall be constructed to the satisfaction of the fire marshal as further described in his memo dated April 10th, 2025.
Didn't say. He did, yeah.
I have the open space noted and yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, call to vote. Dan Radman, I vote yes. Krista Nielsen,
Yes.
John Chris,
No.
Chris Herring,
No.
John Engel,
No.
Paul Knag,
Yes.
Alan Swerdlow,
Yes.
Tom Benton,
Yes.
Eric Knowles.
Yes.
6-3. Application passes. What else do we have on the agenda for tonight?
If the commission wants to deliberate on the text amendment for the apartment zone, they could.
This is the apartment zone surrounding the application for the Richmond Hill property. I have to recuse myself, but if we have some time, like to deliberate on this one, feel free.
Okay. So we had discussed attempting to end this
Yeah.
meeting at 10 o'clock. So that gives us at least 30 minutes to get started.
28.
I do have a quick update on the zoning regulation update. If we, I don't know if we want to do that after or.
Let's do it before, and then we can just use the rest of the time.
So, just for the whole commission, our RFP closed on Monday at 3 o'clock. we got 7 competitive responses, which is great. We only got 4 for the POCD, so, really raised the bar this time, I guess. I'm in the process of reviewing them all because they're, lengthy documents. So I'm hoping by the end of the business tomorrow, I'll have sort of a review matrix for the subcommittee to review. That basically, rather than you all have to read, 740-page proposals, you'll just have a nice little Excel spreadsheet that, tries to simplify it and, recommends pages to read specifically. And it'll also rank what my personal opinion is after first reading of these proposals. So from that, next step would be probably to have the subcommittee meet sooner rather than later. If there's a clear winner, you guys can just vote on the clear winner. Or if you're torn between 1 or 2, or 2 or 3, you could bring people in for Q&As like we did on the POCD. But it's really up to you. There's no requirement to do that. I haven't fully formed my thoughts yet to say that there is or isn't a clear front runner yet, but exciting that we got so many responses. I can send out an email to the subcommittee about when to get a calendar on, or to get a meeting on the calendar, or if we wanted to talk about it now, we could, but that's the general update. I think the goal of having someone onboarded before the summer is very realistic. And it would probably be them doing a lot of their analysis and data gathering over the summer. And then once school's back in session, we'd really get into, public engagement and whatnot.
It's certainly very encouraging. I would just suggest, Ms. Carey, that in addition to your, what I'm sure will be a very useful executive summary, that the full documents be available so that if you want to do the deep dive, you help yourself.
Yep.
So question, if I wasn't here for the initial discussions, I cannot vote on this, correct?
On the text amendment? So this is the zoning regulation
This is-
update is,
the zoning subcommittee.
Right.
We're not voting on anything. The only thing we'd be doing is setting a meeting date.
for the
Yeah.
subcommittee, for the
Oh, okay.
subcommittee, yeah.
We just happen to be discussing it now because all the subcommittee members are here.
Sarah, when are you thinking, like,
Yeah.
after our regular
Like
meeting in April?
after, so I mean, on the RFP, we said we would try to have a consultant selected by May 15th. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but yeah, it could be after the April meeting. I guess that makes sense in spring. Yeah.
Yeah, because spring breaks next week, so.
Well, the week after the next meeting certainly is.
The week of May 5th.
It's the week of.
Yeah, on Monday,
You guys
Cinco de
want 2
Mayo.
meetings
and
in 1 week.
That's good for me anyway, for what it's
The
worth.
week of May 5th.
Yes, ma'am.
Who's on the committee? The 3 of us.
Commissioner
yeah.
Benton
And
and Commissioner Knowles and Commissioner Engel.
Traveling to
The
college
only,
graduation.
the week of the 5th you are?
About the week of the 28th.
yeah, the only day I'd be available is the 8th.
The week of what, Sarah?
What about the week of April 28th?
Oh,
April 28th.
We already have P and Z.
the meeting on the 29th.
We have a meeting on, is it the
I-
22nd or 29th?
I'm out of town 30th through the 2nd.
When's our
Okay,
next P and Z meeting?
The 29th.
29th.
29th,
29th, sorry.
not the 22nd, sorry.
Week of the 12th, May.
I have a meeting, the Affordable Housing Committee Monday night, potentially,
I'm not available on the 12th. I'm taking a certification exam, so.
but the rest of that week,
14th, 15th.
either of those work for me.
14th and 15th of May.
So was that for discussing, like, would we be
Discussing the RFP.
targeting? So would we target having consultants there at that meeting, or are we pushing it even further?
I think that's a meeting to discuss the RFPs and who the short list of consultants is going to be.
Okay.
So you would suggest then, Mr. Chairman, that there be essentially a 2-step process. One, we get together, we talk about it, we sort of come down to a final 4 or final 2 or a bake-off, and then we call maybe the top 2 in for the bake-off and then decide.
I think so. Your plan wasn't to have all 7 in here, was it?
No, not at all.
Okay. Yeah.
So there would be one
I
maybe.
would try
that-
to get down to the final 3 and then bring them in for presentation and discussion.
So that'd be probably just after Memorial Day, the very beginning of June, maybe.
Yeah.
We would then have the bake off.
Yep.
Okay.
Want to pick the 15th, May 15th? I'm just throwing it out there.
Check the rooms and.
I can check that right now. I mean, I'm sure it's fine, and if it's not, we could always do Zoom for that.
Yeah,
if we had
that's
to.
fine too.
So
Okay.
Okay, why don't you guys talk text a minute?
All right. So
I can pull it up on my screen.
do you want me, do I need to read the agenda item into the record?
Sure.
All right. So this is discussion and consideration of the request of David Rucci, Lampert, Tui and Rucci LLC, authorized agent for 14 Richmond Hill LLC owners to amend the zoning regulations dated June 16th, 2007, amended December 6th, 2024, to amend section 5.4.c to allow the Planning and Zoning Commission to reduce certain requirements for legally non-conforming lots in order to facilitate the redevelopment of those lots and housing in the apartment zone. Sarah has the proposed text amendment up on the screen. So, we've closed the hearing. We've heard from Mr. Rucci. Let's start with people's initial thoughts on how they feel about this and what, if any, text changes they would want to see made to the proposal here.
Are we seating any of the alternates for this? Since
Bradman's recused, so yes, do you have Mr. Pratt, would you like to be seated?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so you're seated.
I guess
He wasn't, you weren't in attendance at the time he made the presentation, right?
I believe you were on Zoom.
Yeah, for
You were
both.
here?
No, I was
Oh,
on Zoom.
Okay,
Yeah, we were just
great.
in the small room, so he
Okay,
was on
great.
Zoom. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, the thing that strikes me about this particular one is that, they're already able to build a pretty big set of buildings like they did on Downriver Road off of Main. And it seems very close to the zoning regs that we're going to rewrite in 6 months. And I feel like adding a text amendment honestly paints us into a corner for how we're going to design our zoning. And it to my mind, it just seems like the applicant was making the point that, well, I'll be able to build more units or I'll be able to build more volume. Don't you want that? And I'm not, it just seems like without holistically looking at the apartment zone and Res B and understanding the difference, given the zoning is so choppy, it's a little bit over across from Acme, it's a little on Richmond Hill, it's a little here. I don't feel like the hardship is there to grant a text amendment for this particular lot, considering they can build a fairly large building based on their initial proposal. So I'm curious on what the committee thinks is the hardship that we'd want to enable a text amendment so close to the rewrite.
Well, so first, I would not use the word hardship because there's no need to prove a hardship in order. I mean, I could request a text amendment on my piece of property right now just because I want to build something different. I don't have to prove that there's a hardship to allow it. I think you're saying, what's the justification for doing this so close to rewriting the zoning ordinance?
But I think, only when an attorney comes in the room do we, no given resident would go ahead and say, I want a text amendment. So can you let the setback be 8.5 feet versus 8 feet?
But they could.
They could, but
I'm just saying it's not common.
But then we end up with regs like we have today.
Correct.
So I guess I'm thinking like, this is just more bad behavior on.
I agree. I agree conceptually with what you're saying.
Behavior? Is that what you said? Well, we encourage people to come before us and make their arguments. We never call that bad behavior.
We welcome public.
It's kind of narrow, right?
We welcome public input.
They're couching it in the sense of saying, look, we're doing this for the whole zone. Anybody who has this situation, which is a non-conforming number of units, which we didn't really get a great explanation as to how many there are. Anybody who gets this, first of all, this benefit that somebody who has a vacant piece of land doesn't already have, we're going to give you something extra on top of that. And it's going to be two things. And we've picked out increased lot coverage, and you can go into, the setbacks more than you could if you were building a new building today. I personally am okay with the concept of rebuilding a building in its place that has certain non-conforming characteristics, right? Whether it be the number of units, whether it be an existing, setback that's only, 12 feet as opposed to 25 feet, because that's how it is, right? Right, and you're building in place, right? So the perception of the building continues to be the same. And I think building, and I think I said that the last hearing, building new, I think is a good thing because of all the, better HVAC, better sustainability, better, insulation, better materials, all the things that go well, as opposed to kind of a dilapidated structure. But on top of that, to say, well, I have these 4 units, but I want to use, make it on a bigger lot and extend into the setbacks. That seems just like, I have a 3-year-old son. I have a 3-year-old son and we read the book. If you give a mouse a cookie, it's like, if you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to want a glass of milk. So this is their glass of milk, right? Like, no, that's not really what you shouldn't be rewarded beyond what you have. You have this thing that you could put 4 units on it. Nobody else in this town could put 4 apartments on a vacant lot, but these guys get the ability to do that. I don't think we've been also presented with the information from the applicant to say that this should apply completely over the entire district for these 2 cherry-picked lot coverage, right? Because you look at the rest of the kind of dimensional standards. We regulate landscaped area, we regulate height. Why were those not included in, the analysis for whether we should have the ability to waive that? They pick these 2 because it helps them. And so I think, to your point, that they're asking for something that's going to narrowly affect their site, but to say, no, we're going to apply it to the whole district. Maybe these aren't the 2 things that are best for the apartment zone in terms of, allowing more units. Do we want to allow more lot coverage? Do we want to allow more height? I don't think we have enough information to give them to create this special permit for these 2 exceptions when I just holistically, I don't know if we have enough information to rationally allow that.
This Commissioner Chris, I'm very sympathetic to Commissioner Knoll's comments, and I think they're well stated. It certainly applied to call it the applicant's lot, and a few others. The exact few others is a little vague, but particularly as we're commencing a stem to stern review of our zoning regulations, I wonder whether it's best to take this and view it and perhaps consider it a future date, but put it into context of what no doubt will be a very thorough review of our multifamily and apartment zone and see where that leads us to. And so putting it in a broader context, I think is going to be useful. So I'm not saying no, but I'm saying let's think about it when we are thinking about similar topics with the apartment zone.
Go ahead, Mr. Engel.
So I'm very familiar with this because I owned for 10 years, I owned the house across the street. So I lived across the street from this, and I've been in this unit when the former owner 6 years ago asked me to rent them. So I was in 2 of these 4 apartments. Because I've heard all the arguments against Rucci, I'm trying to put myself in his shoes and actually make his argument. I think what he's saying, and I have his documents here, is he's saying that it's consistent with the zone. It's something he said, and he would have pointed at the 4 units that replaced 2 on the other side of the Richmond Hill parking lot. There were 2 small houses, and they got replaced with modern-sized houses, and there were 4 of them. And then he might point to the one next to me where the applicant came and said, I'd like to knock down these 2 old houses and replace them with 4. And the commission said, no. So the commission has allowed more development, more density in the zone sometimes, but not always. What strikes me about this, though, is that when Rucci points out the zone, his text amendment is for non-conforming properties. And this is the only one. This is the only one. So I have a tough time with it on the basis of what I call spot zoning. So he's not wrong when he says consistent with the zone to now make larger units. That's true. But this is the only property in the zone, as far as I can tell from his own document, that benefits from the text change. So I have a tough time with that. And his own argument on page 2 is that he has the right to replace 4 with 4. But if he doesn't, and we don't grant this, that he will be able to build two units on that property. And so I don't think that that is a problem, and I don't think that's inconsistent with the zone. So I'm just trying to put myself in his, remind myself of some of the language he used on why this is appropriate. And so I'll end with an argument he made. He said, if we're trying to encourage greater density in the downtown and in the apartment zone in particular, then our new regulations will probably allow for larger units and more density. Unfortunately, this text regulation at this time, he's the only one being affected by it. I'm done.
Jump in for a moment. So I, spent a lot of time talking with applicants before it was even an application, as I do on most applications. And, in their defense, they came in with this idea, honestly, before we were even done with the POCD. And so I, tried to put pressure on them to get it in sooner rather than later. So I understand the timing is not great, but I will say in their defense, they've been working on this for a while to try to craft it. To give themselves their best chance at approval. So I will say timing is, not on their side, obviously. With that, I will say the applicant did not do the strongest job at providing examples of where this regulation will or could have impact. I will say that any development in the apartment zone that was constructed prior to 1997 is non-conforming, because the density that we have today in the apartment zone is the least dense it's ever been in the apartment zone. And that went into effect in 1997. Problem is, you won't see redevelopment on most of those because they're all condos or, co-ops. So it does technically apply to most of the apartment zone. It's just for other outside factors, you're never going to see someone use this regulation because you're not going to see a 30-unit condo complex likely sell.
Can you explain that? I honestly don't understand. When you say most of the units are non-conforming, I believe when he said it, he was saying, I'm non-conforming, I'm unique because I have 4 small units on this back lot.
So
And I can't think of another example.
I'm referring to density. So density on the properties right now in the apartment zone is 1 unit per 5,000 acres. In square feet. Yeah, square feet, sorry. 5,000 square feet. In the 50s through the 70s, it was 1 unit per 1,500 square feet. Then in the 70s, they went to 1 unit per 3,750 square feet. So, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, but I have it in my files. In 2015, the town
So the whole
planner-
zone is non-conforming with respect to density only.
They were, in my opinion, they were referring to in this, a non-conforming multifamily dwelling. They didn't say it, but I think they meant a non-conforming multifamily dwelling pertaining to
density.
Yeah, as to density in the apartment zone. So that, I know that that's what their intent was because I knew it. I spent a lot of time talking.
Does he need the density to rebuild 4 units on that property if we don't give him 35% coverage?
He needs this approval to build 3. He has a legal right to build 4. They've shown me plans. I don't think that they could build 4 modern sized apartments on these lots under the current setbacks, which is why
build bigger
he-
units.
and the
What he wants
setbacks, the setbacks as well. It's the bulk and the setbacks. So I think with the commission, if I were in your shoes, what I would be grappling with is 2 things. You are about to embark on this large zoning regulation rewrite. Do you want to experiment a little bit with 2 small properties to see if playing around with the regulations, if you like what you get from this development? you could use it as an experiment. You may not be comfortable with that, but you could do it. Second is, I just lost my train of thought, but okay. The other option is you don't approve this. They will probably go ahead. They probably will go ahead and build under what they're allowed to build, which is going to be 2 attached or detached units, which is what you're seeing pop up all over the apartment zone.
Yeah.
If you're fine with that, don't approve this, regulation. But if you want to see what else can be built in the apartment zone, this is a way to do that.
So here are my thoughts on it, which hopefully combine some of this. I mean, I think that allowing to be rebuilt at the same density, especially knowing that most of what's built in the apartment zone is more dense than what you could build today, that's not really an issue for me. And if that's all they came in asking for, and to be able to use the old setbacks, I wouldn't really have an issue with it. But as Mr. Knowles pointed out, they tried to sweeten the pot a little bit and ask for more coverage. And they insist that they need more coverage and that they don't actually even want this text amendment if they can't have more coverage. And that's the part that gives me a little bit of pause. I don't really have a problem with density in the apartment zone as
Meaning 4 units versus 3 or 2. You don't have a problem with
No,
that.
to me, that's
No.
fine. I mean, again, as Mr. Rucci pointed out, if there's a place in town for us to be adding density, it is the apartment zone. If there is a place in town to be adding density, it is 1 block from the train station. Like, I don't have an issue with that.
Really unit density versus square footage density. That's the thing I think that is being conflated, because like if you just use the word like lesser unit density or, more square footage, because I think we're also saying like the loom and the lot coverage, right? If it's like this.
Yes.
So density is density. Yeah,
Density is right, the number of units. Bulk is
the massing of the building.
envelope you see, right? And you could see the building now, right? The building now has 4 units, but it looks on the outside maybe like a 1-family home, right? But I think there's like a stair on the outside that goes up to the 2nd floor. But you would perceive that as a 1-family home. What they're showing and what they showed in the renderings, that's going to be like 3 big townhouses, right? That's, but it's only doable because they have the added lot coverage and they can extend into the setbacks. And so I think the perception of somebody driving down the road or walking, that to me is more concerning than say, okay, you can rebuild the structure in place with, I think the setback might even be not conforming. And so it's a little bit bigger of a structure than what you could build today if you didn't, have it. But it doesn't change, even though there might be 4 units inside, it doesn't change the perception of the structure on the lot.
The thing I would say is that like if you're the neighbor, right? Like you bought the house next door, you bought the house on the other side, like you buy into a certain zone with the expectation. And these guys who bought the lot, like they bought the lot with the FAR and the regs, like it was priced into the purchase price. Like if they basically bought that same lot with the, a 4-story FAR, like I feel like they're buying a lot with a certain potential and then asking for the law to change to make it more profitable.
So, I mean, 2 points. Just to speak to what Commissioner Herring said just now, they did purchase in the apartment zone. You did purchase a 1-family home in the apartment zone. So, there is potential for apartments to go next to you. But I do hear the point. One other thing to consider, B-res zone, which, would be the next level up in zoning, the coverage requirements are the exact same. So it's not listed this way, but if you do the math, a 7,500 square foot lot in the B-res zone gets 25% coverage. I remember Attorney Rucci making an argument, why is coverage the same in a 1-family zone versus a multifamily zone? Does the commission think that's logical?
Right.
Maybe, maybe not.
But also to that point, right? Like they're doing this, they're adding the coverage and they're increasing, going into the setbacks because it gets bigger units. That was kind of the clear, right? What's to say in this, going through this, redo or redrafting of the zoning, that we don't come up with other regulations that may, prevent the kind of ills of these really big 3,000 square foot buildings, right? What if you impose an FAR? What if you impose, a reduced height, right? There are other tools in our tool bag in the future going through this than saying, okay, well, just in this case, we'll give you, lot coverage and, lesser setbacks because it helps your building right now. It might not be holistically kind of how you want to modify the envelopes of buildings in these zones. So I think it goes back to, I think this is tailored to their situation. And that's what, I mean, again, I'm fine with the density. You know, I think the apartment zone, it's called the apartment zone for a purpose and should have more density than what's there now. But the envelope and the structure and the cherry picked nature of these two provisions that they want to waive, I don't know if we've been presented with enough information from the applicant to understand if those are the two we want to waive, these are how we want to waive them, or if there's other regulations that we want to also incorporate to figure out what type of envelope we'd like to see.
Can we make a motion? Because it doesn't look like there's
Well,
any support in the room.
I was gonna ask for a straw poll, but if someone wants to go for a motion, then let's just
Yeah.
go for a motion so that.
One point is, maybe on the other side, having 4 units, first 2 big ones, I think I'm more in favor of. I think that came through in the POCD that we need more places for people who are empty nesters to have things that are right size for what they need walking down.
Mhm.
If you approve this, you get 4 units that are probably a little more decently sized for someone who wants a smaller place. Versus what I think they're gonna build if we decline it, which is gonna be 2 big homes, maybe 3. So I mean, that's the only thing, forget anything for them. If it's more beneficial for the town, in that part of the town, to have 4 smaller units. And again, more big mega units.
Well, they're gonna, they have the right to wait. If we say, we're gonna consider this in the context of the overall review of the regulations, you know, one option they obviously have is to wait and see what happens with that.
Right. I mean, yeah, I mean, if time isn't of the essence, they could maybe win more later by waiting. I don't know if they will, but.
Yeah, I mean, we could go to 3 stories versus 2.5.
Right.
Like we could say, hey, it's flat story, flat roof versus pitch roof. So you could change a lot of things.
Okay, so I was gonna take a straw poll, but if we want to go straight to a motion, which do you prefer? You want me to just kind of assess?
Well, if somebody has a creative idea that we haven't considered, they should speak now, because otherwise it'll just be a yes, no. If somebody wants to modify what he does, meaning.
Well, I don't want to spend time trying to modify it if we're headed towards a no. So that's why I was gonna take a straw
But if
poll.
everybody is objecting to the 35%, and that's the only problem, meaning you have no problem rebuilding at the same density, and you have no problem with utilizing the setbacks. It sounds to me like what everybody's objecting to is 35% coverage.
He didn't want to,
Facts as well.
he didn't want to, change that didn't include that.
I mean, my guess is it's 35, take it or leave it, is where I came from with the applicant.
Just wanted to make sure that was clear, if that's what we think. And, okay.
If we're looking at this in the context of the apartment zone broadly as part of our zoning rules review, well, that comes out where it comes out, but I'm having a tough time coming to that conclusion right now today.
Okay,
That's me.
so it's 10 o'clock. So let's just take a soft straw poll right now. How many people are leaning towards a no on a text amendment here?
I mean, that's the majority.
All right, so does anyone want to make a motion so we don't spend more time?
I move that we deny the proposed amendment at this time without prejudice to consideration in connection with our overall review of the zoning regulations.
I second that.
Okay, let
We
me,
need reasons or we don't need reasons to deny a text change. I don't think we need them for a
No,
text.
you
change.
don't.
Okay, no
let me
reasons.
take a.
Legislative.
Engel voted or seconded it. All right, so in terms of the vote, Mr. Benton? So I guess for a no.
Yes is a no.
A yes vote is voting for a no. Okay. Mr. Benton?
No.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Herring?
Yes.
Mr. Knag?
Yes.
Mr. Knowles?
Yes.
Mr. Chris?
Yes.
Ms. Nielsen? Yes. Mr. Swordlow?
Yes.
Mr. Pratt? Okay. So
8-1.
8-1.
Motion passes.
The motion passes.
To deny.
The denial of the text amendment.
Triple negative.
Yes to denial of the text.
While everyone is here, are we closing the books on the zoning regulations? Like, if people are trying to come through with text changes, are we Are we done?
Start to send signals in that direction because
I would think.
Especially,
Anyone else?
especially because of things like this where it's just so, it's so narrow and yeah.
Realize it'll stall development in the town for the next 2 years.
well, it will if they can't comply with
If
the
they can't
existing
comply.
regulations.
Which we don't
But-
really like.
But applications like the one you just voted on will not come before us. For 2 years.
Say, don't go, she's gonna say, go watch the tape, you'll see what the disposition of the council is, make your own decision.
Well, no, I mean, I will be more direct than that because I don't want waste applicants or the commission's time.
And
So
look, they
it's-
also came and there was a take it or leave it. And it
It
was,
was.
right? And it was not, you know, there were other, you could modify your proposal before us. If you really wanted to get something built, they did not decide to modify.
Yeah, so I wouldn't prejudge. Somebody could come in and ask for a rather minor change and not give us a take it or leave it attitude. I can't prejudge who might ask for what.
Sarah, are you thinking, sorry, no, my microphone's off. Are you thinking when we get closer, when we have a consultant on board and we are moving in the zoning regulation space rewrite, is it a soft, hey, this isn't the time, don't come to us? Or is it a hard, like, we're doing a moratorium? I don't know if we even do a moratorium on text
mean,
amendments.
Because you guys have full discretion over your regulations, you could deny for, whatever reason. So I don't think there needs to be an official moratorium that you're not hearing them, but, it's just helpful for me to recommend to applicants because people come to me with, do I have a shot at getting approval? And if the commission doesn't want to hear text amendments, I want to tell, the public that.
Right.
Well, you heard what we said. I think, the preference would be not to have to change things, but on the other hand, that doesn't mean. that
It's
we
a
can't
big
give it a
public
try,
institution,
right?
something large. for
Exactly.
the Town, that swings differently than a guy trying to build it.
I would agree. If, for example, if the library came to us today, I would feel honor bound to think about it. Something like that, but yes, I agree with that.
St. Luke's, which is currently in litigation, that may be what is required as a text amendment to solve that problem. So I'm not gonna prohibit anybody coming back for any reason.
There's mine.
Including this applicant who could come back with a revised proposal.
Yeah, door's open, but
There's one other matter I want to get back to we had suggested that we might make a recommendation to the police that they take a look at that intersection issue. Could Sarah, I think that's the consensus. Sarah, could you convey that?
Can I offer an opinion on that?
Sure.
I used to live on that road for about 6 years, 7 years.
We're still recording, right?
Huh?
Like, we're still fully in the meeting right now, correct? Just,
Sure.
okay, I'm just making sure, like, we're still recording and.
No, I'm not gonna say
yeah.
anything bad.
Okay.
I used to live on the road and dealt with that intersection the whole time I lived there. And no one ever complained about it. And there's, as far as I'm aware, there's never been any issues. And it's a separate, it's a separate entity, it's a separate property. It's not adjacent to this one. It's not part of this one. All we can do is make a recommendation to whether it's fire, police department or DPW to take a look at it. Whether they do anything with it, that's up to them. But we can't force them to do anything.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the reason I posed the question is really to put the idea in their head. If you really believe this is an issue, you as a citizen can petition other town bodies.
Yeah.
If you believe it's a public safety issue,
Absolutely.
something for you to think about, balls in their court to move it forward, which it is right now without even us weighing in.
So we don't have to wait. Okay. Meeting over or not?
It's adjourned.